We'll call this Tuesday, June 9th, 2015. Meeting of the Board of Trustees to order, please, with a roll call.
Just a moment, please.
Veronica Frankel, Howard Rosenberg.
Here.
Lisa Ruggiero.
He's here somewhere.
Here. Nick Smith.
He's on his way. He called me.
Angela Taylor.
I'm here.
John Mayer.
Here.
And Hope.
And Trustee Frankel had an emergency. She was here and she had to leave here, so I don't know if she'll be back or not. So. Okay, let's stand for the pledge. And Tom found the Raider seat since he's a Raider graduate, so I'm going to ask him to lead the pledge.
My honor. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We'll have approval of the agenda, and I'd ask that since Howard's got to take a run and he'll be back, and Veronica may be back, I'd like to move the strategic plan to after, it is 6:03, I'd like to move it to the end of the items, so that would be around 6:08, I think. So I'll accept the motion. So moved. Second.
I said.
It's been moved and seconded to approve
Those damn birds.
move the one agenda item 6:03 after 6:08. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same signal. So carried, let the record show unanimously. This time we have public comment. We have three, and in the order that they were put in. The first one is Lori Robertson. A reminder, you have 3 minutes. Podium, please.
Hi, my name is Lori Robertson. My daughter is Malibu Robertson. She currently is a sophomore at Reed High School. 3 minutes is not nearly enough time to explain to you the injustices done to my daughter this year by Reed High School staff and administration, the Washoe County School District, and the adults who are supposed to protect her. How do I put a school year worth of bullying, hazing, and lack of response from the school district in just a few short minutes? How do I explain the lasting damages and effects this has had on my 16-year-old child? And how do I explain to you how desperate we are for help? I have followed the rules, the guidelines, only for this district not to do the same. I have been told many things from there is no evidence, can you prove it, or my personal favorite, our hands are tied. My daughter has had to live with this injustice, coming home to cry daily because no one will hear her plead for help. I have had to encourage her when the school district has done nothing to tear her down, and I've had to hold her when she feels like she can't fight back anymore. My daughter's face has been seen on the bill SB 504, and her testament has been submitted to legislation in regards to anti-bullying. And yet, meeting with the governor and personal letters from his Senator Harry Reid, I can still not get the school board to listen to us. We have called Tracy Davis' office no less than 13 times with no response. We have met here with several administrators and superintendents with no resolve. I am here today to implore you to hear her story, help right all the wrongs that she has had to endure. We have filed many complaints with no resolve, leaving our daughter in harm's way, taking away the things that are important to her. We believe not only has the school district ignored their own policies, but they have potentially broken the law. Furthermore, we believe this school district is dangerously close to, if not already, violating our daughter's civil rights. Our daughter has suffered enough through no fault of her own, and it is time for this school district to uphold their own policies and law, and I beg you to help her be heard. Thank you.
Usually we don't respond to public comment, but I'd like you, there's a fellow named Dr. Lamarca.
I've already spoken with him.
Well, wait and hear me out, okay? I'd like you to set up a meeting with him with me present. All right, and we'll see what's going on and what's happening. So you ask him to set up a meeting where I can be with you at the meeting and with some people, and he knows who to bring into the meeting, I'm sure, because he's very good. So if you would please see him after public comment and tell him your name and number, and he'll set up a meeting where I'll be in attendance.
He has all that information.
Well, give it to him again. Okay.
It doesn't hurt.
Yeah, just to be safe.
Okay?
Thank you.
Usually we don't respond to public comment, but I think this might be a time straight that we need to come to. Okay? Next is Susanna Colin, I think. Or, I'm good. Isn't that you?
Me?
Yeah.
Shannon?
Janet?
Shannon.
Shannon, okay. The H looks like an N. I'm sorry.
You write the way I do. Decorative.
I try my best at times.
You have 3 minutes.
Good afternoon, Board. This is the second time I'm speaking to you today about this same topic. You'll have to forgive me. I just ran an 8+ mile obstacle course and caught a cold. So, Mr. President, today I'm speaking about Board Policy 4505. While I appreciate your optimism in highlighting the successes of the school district in the op-ed in the Gazette, I wanted to speak as a member not only of the LGBT community, as an employee of Washoe County School District, as a psychologist, but as a member of this community. I know firsthand, as a student who went to many schools across this country, what happens on a daily basis. Students are bullied, harassed, and intimidated. This occurs, at the staff level as well as mostly at the peer level. In regards to Board Policy 4505, regardless of the intent of certain provisions of this policy and certain provisions can negatively impact students in this school district. As a person who's worked here for the last 4 years, I can tell you from firsthand experience that the bullying, harassment, and intimidation continues to occur today. It's vital that LGBT students in both elementary and secondary school know that there's a staff member who's overcome and who they can turn to when they are feeling neglected, harassed, ignored, etc. Certain aspects of this general policy can be left open to interpretation and up to the whim of specific site principals at school sites who sometimes view themselves as dictators of schools they oversee, and consequently may pick and choose the quote-unquote freedom of expression they want to see. If the board isn't willing to scrap certain provisions within this proposed policy, it needs to make the language within the policy more concrete so that the potentially bigoted and homophobic staff members are not able to make these decisions at a site level. If this board fails to act or make those changes, this board continues, as well as this school district, to open itself up to litigation. Oftentimes, as a board or as a community or organization, we surround ourselves by people who think what we think. And what happens with these policies is that they become a matter of groupthink. And they are created in a vacuum by which only the lawyers for the school district can ensure that they are not violating any civil rights or equal employment opportunity laws. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Mr. Eppolino. Three minutes.
My name is John Eppolino. I wanted to talk once here, and this is about student data and the lack of protecting the children's data. I'm going to give you the legislative update that Lindsay won't give you. SB 463 was the data protection bill that came from the Senate Education Committee and unfortunately got gutted by the Assembly Education Committee. Even people on the committee don't know how it happened. That bill initially defined personally identifiable pupil data as belonging to the parent and the pupil. The Assembly gutted that language. Again, some members of the Assembly Education Committee don't know how that happened. Melissa Woodbury, the chair of the committee, knows. I don't know if it was Infinite Campus that was involved. It doesn't appear that it was the Board of Education because they never spoke up at the Senate when the bill was heard in the Senate and passed unanimously. We don't know what happened, but not only did the data, well, not only does the data now not belong to the parents and the students, we can't get a clear answer of who the personally identifiable information for the students does belong to. Probably Infinite Campus and the State Department of Ed, but certainly not us. That's very problematic. Everybody was worried about other things in Carson City, and what I didn't see is really any protection of the children. I'll tell you who did try to help us twice was Harvey Munford, Assemblyman Munford, a Democrat from the South. What he tried to do was get an opt-out of SBAC testing into the Nevada state law twice, and the same chair of the Assembly Education Committee would not allow it, Republican Melissa Woodbury. And then a Republican tried to get that same data or that same amendment added on the floor that would have allowed student opt-out throughout the state. Because remember, some counties are not allowing students to opt out of SBAC, and some charter schools, and I understand there's at least one here in Washoe County, that's not allowing parents to opt out of the SBAC. So Republican Brent Jones also tried to get it added, and nobody was able. What I saw is a lot of stuff happening under the table down there, and it, to me, I was there quite a bit, it all seemed to be about the political future of one man, not about what's best for the children in Nevada. And I have children in this district. You guys are the last line of defense. I don't know what EduSoft is, or I don't know who else you guys are going to be giving our children's data to. That's why I'm here today, to find out. Thank you for the time.
Thank you very much for your comments. We appreciate them.
Yes, sir, you're welcome.
Okay, I don't have any more cards. Is there anybody else that would like to speak under public comment? Here's someone moving to the front. And you can speak and then make out a card and turn it in.
Gretchen Beets, parent of Clayton and Reno school students and a citizen who's interested in the formulation of a committee to investigate the options that we have for expanding capital funding. That's it.
Thank you very much for your comment. Short and sweet.
Well, can we connect
Thank
her
you.
with Riley?
Pardon?
Can we connect her with Riley? Oh, to okay.
Okay, next we'll go to board reports, and we'll start, since this is his last meeting. It's not your last meeting?
I was planning on coming to the last one.
Since this is next to the last.
Next to last, okay. You have a report?
I'm graduating this Saturday.
Give us a report exactly. You're going to Harvard by the River, better known as UNR, and you're taking up what?
Computer science. I'm studying computer science.
Oh, computer science. Great. Great.
Apparently I'm sharing more than I thought I was. I don't actually have a full ride. Not sharing that, I guess. It's not a declared full ride,
Terrific. I hear good things on the Safe and Schools Commission, that things are rolling right along.
Yes,
So-
very exciting things. Hopefully we'll be able to announce some of those big things soon. So,
Great.
yes.
Great. Mr. Smith.
So, I got to do a couple fun things. Got to spend a little bit of time at Van Gorder Elementary School last week. That was a good time. The kids were having fun. Some great classes. You'd think that maybe they'd start to slow things down since it's the end of the year, but they were still going full steam ahead like it's the beginning of the year. So it was pretty neat. What else did we do? I'm on the advisory council for parent involvement and family engagement. And so we had a meeting where we're working on redoing the family engagement policy for the state. So we almost have that draft completed, and it's actually a much friendlier document now. I think for those who have read it, the state's document is not so friendly. So the new document will be more friendly, give a little bit more freedom and direction to the schools, which is something I'm really proud of. So there's 10 of us across the state working on making that recommendation right now. So that's almost done. And then, I love going to the schools, but probably the highlight of my last couple weeks was going to a PTA meeting, because it really is about kids and their parents that make education successful. Getting to see some parents, and might I add, at a school that is a challenging school, a Title I school, where the family involvement is not so great. So getting them, going with a new PTA was pretty cool. So I like being there. That's it.
Great. Dr. Taylor?
All right, like my fellow trustees, a lot happening towards the end of the year, so I'll just focus in on a couple of things that I think I did that I didn't have any of you guys at, and most of us were at a lot of places, so that's kind of hard to do. I had a chance to go to the Washoe Educational Support Professionals. They had a movie screening of Tomorrowland. And it was just great just to get out with some of those folks that make everything happen on a day-to-day basis in the schools, and go, and they had raffles. They were raising some money to send someone to a national conference. They gave out T-shirts, and it was just, the event itself was better than the movie. But anyway, I got a chance to visit Elmcrest, Winnemucca. I had some visits. The two in particular I want to talk about, because they were all very good, was I went to Winnemucca Elementary School, and they had the 5th grade wax museum. And I thought, what the heck is that? Is that safe for kids? Trustee Rogeriel, pouring wax. I'm thinking, but it was almost like a little mini Chautauqua. And they had their 5th grade kids lining the hallway, and they had little buttons that they had drawn on their hand. And they were dressed in costume, and they were historical figures. They had done reports on them, and they had done a lot of research. And you go up to them and you push the button, and then they come alive. And they tell the story about who they are, and they had a little poster behind them that they made that had their name, and it was just cool. I mean, characters from sports characters to historical characters to, it was fantastic. And then they had the 4th graders doing reports, going and pushing buttons and writing out little reports. It was such. I'm so glad I was invited to go to that day at that school, because it was something that was really unique. And then, like I said, I had a chance, had a lot of stuff to do. But the other thing that I really want to point out was the 50th anniversary of Rita Cannon Elementary School. And they did a presentation to their first principal, his wife, because he's deceased. They donated a garden in the name of he was the first principal to hire an African American female teacher in the district, Vilene Webb, and they named their garden after her. And I know her, so that was really cool. And then they buried a time capsule, and every grade made something and put it in the time capsule. And I'm saying they buried the time capsule. I was the only one shoveling. That's all I'm saying.
They're not dopes.
That's all I'm saying.
They're not dopes.
But it was outstanding to be a lot of great activities happening. So it was great to be a part. I was really honored to be there.
That's great that they dedicated the garden for
Vilene Webb.
Yeah, she's a terrific person.
And the Lions Club actually helped them get the garden going several years ago, so they were there as well.
Oh, that's great.
It was a great event.
That's great. Let's see, Dr. McClure?
Yes, I was at the WEA Awards banquet along with several others, and it's fun for me to go to that, not only to see the awards that are given out, but knowing many of the teachers. This is the first that it happened for me. I always hire a bunch of teachers, and so a bunch of them are retiring. And then one of my students from Grace Warner Elementary got an award because he teaches at Billinghurst. So a Grammy is really old, that's all I can say. But it was a stellar fun night. Saw a lot of people that I knew and renewed friendships, so it was great.
Trustee Rosenberg.
I went to McQueen's, I'm going to get this wrong, the Interglobal Education Program that they have. 4 of their kids made a wonderful presentation. The kids study 2 languages in addition to English. They do part of their presentation in that language and someone translates for them. It was one particular one that grabbed me, the Chinese presence in Africa. These kids have done some real digging, and they have found a lot of stuff that I would never even have thought of. It was really quite something. I can't wait to get them at school. They actually know how to do research. How unusual. Then TMCC's graduation. There were a number of us there. We had a wonderful time. It was Susan's last graduation, and the kids were really sorry to see her go, as we are as well. But it was quite something.
Good. I can cross off a lot off of my list here. But first, I want to say, I keep going to the ROTC awards nights, and they're just wonderful. Worcester, Hug, McQueen, and Sparks. And I was talking to one of the students, Worcester's ROTC, first time in history that they had both the commander and the NCO of the whole regiment of Washoe County from the same school. And then, lo and behold, the commander gave it to another cadet from Worcester that's going to be the cadet commander for next year, and then the NCO is going to be from Hug. But I was talking to a girl at Worcester, and she was talking about the American Legion speech contest. And I remember it when I was in high school, but she said that the participation rate has dropped off on these speech contests, and these kids she said she got a big scholarship, and some of the other students got like $2,500 scholarship, but they don't really get a whole lot of interest in them. So maybe the curriculum department could send out some things about when these contests are. Voice of Democracy, they get a trip back to DC, and all different kinds of opportunities for kids. And she thought that more kids should participate. And then I was at the Realtors Association general meeting of all the realtors in the town, and they had a wonderful, wonderful, marvelous, outstanding speaker. Just wooed everybody. Tracy Davis did a marvelous job, and I know a lot of realtors because my cousin's a realtor and his wife, and afterwards a lot of them just full of comments for promoting a positive attitude for our schools, and achievement is not the only thing, it's other things, and Tracy did a outstanding job. And then Saturday there was a wonderful thing at Sparks Middle School, and it was called Together We're Better, and they had a walk and run, and what a turnout they had, and it was great. Considering all the tragedy that school's been through and everything, the kids all turned out and ran, and it was just a nice event. And then last but not least, last Friday I got to throw out the first pitch at Aces ball field, and it almost made it all the way over to the visitors' dugout, but not quite. Not quite. The catcher ran like mad to stop it from going into the visitors' dugout. But it was a great experience, and I got to talk to a lot of kids that were there because it was celebrate everything. Celebrate armed forces, celebrate schools. There were teachers, administrators, students there, just enjoying the evening. And I want to thank, I know that the ACES participates in a lot of things in our school district, including, I think, the Educator of the Month, and they are partners with Bud Beasley Elementary and stuff. And I just like to see us connecting with the community in fun type ways. It was a fun activity, and of course Don held my coat. I would have pitched better, but the ball was wet.
Mr. President, if I may, I neglected to say this. Tracy Davis was also the keynote speaker at a community event. We had a lot of local churches came together and honored their graduates. And we had graduates there from 4 or 5 schools, and even some that came back from college and so on. She was a keynote speaker, and there are people that are still talking about it, and it was almost 2 weeks ago. She did an incredible job. We did record it, and so for a small fee, we'll be willing to.
You pay us or we pay you?
No, you want this one. This is good. You want this one. But she did a tremendous job, and people are really excited about it. And really, again, Tracy, thank you for that. It was a wonderful event, but you did a tremendous job.
It's a good, we have a good person out there in front that's doing these kind of things. It's wonderful. Now it's your report.
Thank you. It's been a busy weekend. It will continue to be busy as we march to the road to graduation and activities for scholarships. We had our first annual Student Voices conference at UNR, and it was wonderful, led with accountability in the Office of School Performance. But it was great to have the kids getting up there and talking from their vantage point as we look at how kids feel and making sure that we're listening to them. Barbara, I echo your words about the WEA banquet. I sat with such a great table, and just the energy the teachers had, but also honoring our retired teachers who provided so much service to kids. What a great night. Kate Smith Career Day was awesome because kids don't have filters in the 3rd and 2nd grade. So they asked lots of questions, and some of those questions probably come from their parents. But they were pretty amazing. So wonderful opportunity to spend half a day with kids just asking questions about teaching and learning and my job. And so I told them I had 7 bosses, and they didn't believe me, but we'll see how it goes. We had the Salute to Women's Achievement Luncheon that attended with some of you. And it was a great day to celebrate the women in our community and their efforts to move us forward. Yesterday, I was at Reno High School. The governor signed SB 511, the Teach Nevada bill. Right now, you're going to talk more about it, but what a great opportunity to be at Reno High and talk about the opportunities for growing your own and what opportunities our kids can have to get college paid for if they want to go into education. And so that's going to be very exciting. The AACT capstone projects that they do every year, I had an opportunity to go give feedback to some of those, and then of course attended some of the other things you talked about with you. And I'll just say it was great to kick off with the first graduation, and we start this week with the rest of them, and it's something powerful to see the faces of the kids when they walk across the stage and they get that diploma and all their hard work and know that there's the next phase. But we're doing some good things for kids.
Very nice. In case you were wondering, Dr. Taylor was just showing me her coin that she got for being colonel. And when you show somebody the coin, if the other person has the coin, like I did, they have to buy that person a drink. Had I not had my coin, I would have had to buy her a drink. But you'll learn who to ask and who not to ask.
I really just wanted to show how cool the coin was.
But this is
pretty cool.
Hugs High has got a really a nice one. It's a hawk and everything. And congratulations, those kids. Really, they wanted to give it to you really bad, and so I hope it was a surprise because I have a hard time keeping secrets.
You did good.
Okay, now we go to consent agenda items. Are there any that anyone would like to pull?
I'd like to pull
3.08. Any others? Do I have a motion to approve 3.02 through 3.16 with the exception of 3.08?
So move.
Second.
And seconded, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same signal. So carried, let the record show unanimously. Okay, 3.08.
I really just had a comment. And that was an apology to Mr. Kate because we accidentally left him off the list at the last meeting. And so I didn't want him in any way to think it was a lack of appreciation for him because he's one of our biggest supporters. He sits on our Safe Schools Commission and he's just a great supporter for the school district. So wanted to take this opportunity to express my appreciation. I know you all. I'll echo that. So that was really the only thing I had about 3.08. So do we need a motion to approve that?
Yes, you do.
I move to approve 3.08.
Second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same signal. So carried. Let the record show unanimously. And in that agenda item is recruiting for the one person that chose not to reapply. Okay. Okay, so we're going to go on to 4.01, and we get to see a person that I didn't know she still existed. What are you doing with all your time now? I bet you wake up in the morning and you get on in your car and it just automatically goes to Carson City. No.
Not quite.
She's a child, so.
Thank you, President Mayor Lindsay Anderson, Government Affairs. I'm kind of sick of this testifying thing. I'll be glad when I get a break from this. Does this clicker? Okay. I'm here before you today, fortunately, to be able to give you the legislative update from the 2015 legislative session. There are so many things that we could talk about. As you know, a big session for education in Nevada, but Scott and I are going to try to focus kind of on the highlights, and then if there's something in particular you want to dig a little deeper into, please just let us know and be happy to do that. These less than 10 slides, I think, here, so we'll be quick. But just as a recap, you'll remember when we talked about the Governor's State of the State address, which we heard and sort of crafted our legislative agenda in conjunction with that. There were some major themes, and I would say those really sort of held true through the legislative session. He talked a lot about modernizing our education system. There was a heavy emphasis on school choice, which you'll see. Lots of new spending, but almost, largely categorical spending for specific programs. That was something that I think is new, and we're going to talk about a little bit more. Accountability and being accountable with those funds obviously was a theme. There's a lot more external type evaluations that we're going to see coming as part of this legislation, and a lot of state sort of centric oversight, state control, shifting of that power back to a lot of the state level and a lot of the new legislation that we're going to talk about. So here are many of the bills that were discussed in his State of the State and came through his legislative platform through the work of his state superintendent, Dale Urquiaga, as well as his own staff. But you've probably heard a lot about the expansion of Zoom schools. In terms of dollar figures, I believe that's the largest categorical spending that we're going to see, over $100 million for Zoom schools statewide. Right now we have 8. We started with 6. We now have 8. The money that we'll be getting is now roughly $7 million a year. So the money is doubling. One new aspect of Zoom schools will be required to select either a middle or a high school. And I think we're pretty far along in that selection process now, since we had anticipated getting this additional resources. But that'll be new work for really the state. There hasn't been a Zoom school be at the secondary level yet, and so that's a requirement of the legislation going forward. Also modified to allow us to use the money on additional programming like professional development, family engagement, some recruitment retention incentives, things like that, where in the past it was a very prescriptive project, and it's still only a portion of that money. But we saw our money doubled, so I think we can anticipate roughly the schools doubling in the upcoming year. And then a similar program that was based on the success of the Zoom schools that we've seen is Victory Schools. And those schools those resources are targeted towards schools that are living in high poverty, not necessarily affected by language learning. So you can't be both a Zoom school and a Victory school. So in the Washoe County School District, Those schools were selected using sort of a combination of census tract data, not necessarily free and reduced lunch. But in the Washoe County School District, we were told that those schools, I believe, I'm going to list them off, Libby Booth, Natchez, Hug High School, and Bailey Charter School, which is one of our district-sponsored charter schools. I feel like I'm leaving one off, but maybe not. And so, you know, Natchez, that'll be sort of new for the state to provide resources to a school like that that's not necessarily language, but more Native American population and what those schools need. And the list of available categories to spend on Victory Schools is very long. I think there's 10 or 11 items, and it's much more focused on social services, wraparound type services that we know our students in poverty need. So
Did they use zip codes too, right?
it was sort of a combination of zip code, census data that they use as opposed to just free and reduced lunch, because I know, you know, there are some problems with that. And again, they had to sift through that list based on who was already a Zoom school that were our highest poverty schools. So those schools were eliminated. Do you want
Dr. McCleary?
Specifically in regard to Natchez, will the families have input into the programming and so on, or how do you know? Do you know how that's going to work?
That's a great question. I believe, I don't have the bill in front of me, but I believe there was a section of the bill that required the schools to develop a plan, and required part of that plan to include engaging with the families at that school, and not only the families, but the community. Right. So I do believe that there will be an opportunity, and the schools will have to reach out to the
We just
community.
had a listen and learn out at anyway, we just had a listen and learn out at Natchez last Tuesday with their concerns, and I think the idea is that we embed those pieces to ensure that we're meeting the needs and addressing their concerns as discussed in a previous meeting.
Thank you. What? It's her mic.
Okay, I'm going to keep going because I know you have a lot on your agenda today, but a lot of publicity around the Read by 3 initiative that was passed and funded. It includes about $30 million statewide for additional literacy specialists in our schools. So I think that money, it will be sort of a grant program, but literacy specialists will have to be identified at each school with an emphasis on that. And then I think the part that gets the most press is the retention component of Read by 3, which in this legislation isn't effective until the summer, I guess, of 2020. And the intent behind that was that with the expansion of full day kindergarten and these additional resources, that the students starting in school we should give them the full chance from kindergarten until, you know, the end of 3rd grade to be proficient in literacy before we enact any kind of retention component. And I will say there's a robust list of good cause exemptions for retention, including special education, previous retention, other things like that, that I think, you know, helped people feel a little better about the retention language. You know, I can't remember off the top of my head, but I think if you, like 2 years, I think if you had less than 2 years of ELL services, then you could be exempt. So there were a considerable list of those exemptions. The Great Teaching and Leading Fund was really sort of early legislation to address what we've talked about with sort of the teacher pipeline issues and being able to ensure that our teachers are getting the best professional development, and we're filling that teacher pipeline to make sure we have qualified candidates to put in our schools. So that'll be a program. The part that will be new for the district is being able to apply to this fund to fund additional professional development we see necessary for our district, as well as other entities who provide professional development. There was a lot of discussion here, President Mayer. I know the RPDPs are close to your heart, and originally there was discussion about changing the structure of RPDP, but that was taken out of this legislation. There is substantial charter school reform that was part of the governor's legislation. SB 491 and 509 changed the accountability measures for charter schools in our state. Senate Bill 508 was the funding formula discussion that will move us in the direction of a weighted funding formula. That was a big part of the governor's modernization plan for the state of Nevada. You've heard the Nevada plan hasn't been modified since the 1960s. And so a lot of that intent was codified in this bill, and we will move to a weighted funding formula for special education students in the 2nd year of the biennium, with the intent to do that for ELL and students in poverty in the next biennium. The Teach Nevada bill, which was what Tracy talked about yesterday, that was just signed by the governor. That's really a two-part piece of legislation. One is to provide signing bonuses for new teachers. As you know, Clark and Washoe both have a significant number of teacher vacancies going into this year. So for new teachers that are teaching in Title I or 1 and 2 star schools can be eligible for a $5,000 bonus in each of their first 2 years. And then the second part of that will be scholarships for young people who enter the teaching profession, their higher education, or also includes private institutions that are licensing teachers, and alternative route to licensure programs will apply to the state board essentially to provide scholarships to students to enter the teaching profession. And then they have to commit to teaching in Nevada for 5 years. And then personal, close to my heart, as I have an impending kindergartner, is the full expansion of full-day kindergarten in the state of Nevada. You heard lots of compelling testimony about how lots of legislators have been working on this for somewhere in the neighborhood of 20 years. And so there was clapping when the budget closed with the full expansion statewide of full-day kindergarten. It is over a 2-year period, and we're still working with the state to determine whether or not all of our schools will be able to be done in the first year, or if we'll have to do a phased-in approach also. So that's a real quick rundown of the big highlights of the governor's platform that he was able to get passed and funded. So I'm going to let Scott talk about school construction.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the board, and Superintendent Davis. Scott Baez for the record. School construction obviously was identified as one of Washoe County School District's top priorities going into this legislative session, and thankfully it was one of the top priorities of the legislature as well. SB 119 was one of the first major pieces of legislation that the body processed. It extends rollover bonding authority to any school district in the state that previously had a voter-approved rollover bond for a period of 10 years. Our capital improvements, people expect this to generate about $200 million over the next 10 years, but as we all know, unfortunately, that is weighted towards the end of that period, and it won't generate significant money in the next couple of years, and won't be able to address our complete needs. That bill also eliminated the requirement to pay prevailing wage on school construction, but in a last-minute deal on the final day of the legislature, most of that requirement was restored. So the prevailing wage threshold will now be on all projects over $250,000, and on school construction projects, prevailing wage will be paid at 90% of the rate that it would be paid on other sorts of projects. So it wasn't completely restored, but it was largely restored. SB 411 is a bill that Senator Debbie Smith sponsored to address our remaining capital improvement needs in light of the rollover bond. This will authorize school districts other than Clark County School District to form community committees made up of business leaders, labor leaders, and district officials to study capital improvement needs across our district and present a binding ballot question if that's so determined as necessary at the 2016 general election. There are 5 different taxes that would be allowable to be raised under this process: the room tax, the government services tax, real property transfer tax, sales tax, and property tax. And it is worth noting that any increase to a property tax would be allowed to be raised outside of the $3.66 statutory cap.
Our next agenda item is about this bill in particular, so we can talk more about it there if you'd like.
It's okay to have
Well, I'm not clear if the public comment is on 401 or 402.
Okay, Rob?
It's on 402.
402, okay.
I'll keep going. I know we'll be quick. I promise. This is just big, exciting stuff, and I want you to hear about it. You can share my enthusiasm for this. Okay, so educator evaluations. This was, I would say, the biggest issue that sort of flew under the radar for a lot of people, but it was very high stakes for our district. We were able to get language in the legislation that ultimately passed that would allow districts, namely us, to apply to the State Board of Education to use a different but equivalent evaluation system and tool, which is probably a little in the weeds, but is in regards to the framework that we've developed using our own Danielson framework in collaboration with our employee association. So that was really important for us to get that language in there. And so we were able to do that. And then also the delay of using student achievement data in evaluating our educators. So I'm sure Mr. Hayes could get up here and tell you all the reasons why that's particularly difficult. But especially given the difficulties we had in statewide and administering testing this year, we were able to push that. So in the upcoming school year, there'll be a delay in using student achievement data. And then the compromise was reached to, in the 16-17 school year, split that data 10 and 10 with state and local, and then 20-20 in the following year. And it's worth noting that if we didn't get this legislation passed or nothing changed, that in the upcoming 15-16 school year, we would have used 50% of state assessment data as the part of educator evaluations. And so you can imagine how important it was to be able to negotiate and make sure that we were still being held accountable and our educators were being held accountable, which nobody's afraid of, but we were doing it in a thoughtful and valid and defensible way.
So our evaluation tool is A-OK to go. Because there was a lot of fear that if we had to revert back to theirs, new one, that the grant would be tarnished and we'd have to pay all that grant money back. So that does not happen now.
We still have to apply to the State Board of Education for approval. So I would say that's going to be a challenge.
So you'll be working on that.
Well, there's a whole team of us working on it internally. But yes, sir.
Because I can see that it's that grant money, to have to return that grant money would be devastating to Washoe County.
Yes, sir. I agree with you. On that same line about evaluations, there was legislation passed requiring districts to reserve part of our existing money for a pay-for-performance program that would basically include a 10% salary bonus for our top 5% of teachers and administrators in the 16-17 school year. So that'll be important to know as we build our budget for the upcoming year, that this was a mandate that was passed this legislative session. And then lots of conversation about the achievement school district. So ultimately the legislation passed, although I would say in an amended form. This is the one that would allow the conversion of traditional public schools into charter schools. The intent was to have the lowest performing schools turned over. These would be identified by the Achievement School District Executive Director. The bill limits those number of schools to 6, which I think was an important compromise that was reached originally. There was no limit to that, and the list of eligible schools were somewhere upwards of 70. And so that was a big number for districts to swallow. So limiting that to 6 made it a little bit more manageable. There was a lot of questions about the facility. So essentially, if a school is converted to an achievement charter school, they will continue to use the district-owned building without compensation. So they will be required to pay for any day-to-day operating expenses or maintenance, light bulbs, that kind of thing. But the district will still be responsible for any major capital repairs that need to happen in those buildings. We were able to get language in the bill that says we don't have to give them priority. They can't just come and say, we want this. But basically, they are in our system just like they are now. And we will address those needs in the same order and prioritization that we currently address capital needs for our district. So I think that protected us a little bit. And then language that requires the Achievement Charter School to accept all the students who are currently at that school unless the student opts out. So it used to kind of be the other way, is that parents could opt in, but that makes it a little bit difficult for parents. So this will protect the students that are currently at that school. So I believe, although I can't remember off the top of my head, that they have a year to sort of ramp up and develop a regulation making process through the State Board of Education, hire an executive director, do a search, that kind of thing, before they will actually start identifying schools that would be eligible for conversion. There is language that they have to consult with the local school board of trustees before they make the decision on which schools become achievement charter schools. So if any of our schools are being considered, then you will certainly have an opportunity to voice your concern. Okay, Scott's going to talk about the next couple here.
SB 302 is another bill that has received substantial attention in the wake of the legislative session. This bill authorizes the creation of education savings accounts, which will divert up to 100% in some cases of a student's statewide average DSA allotment if that student had been enrolled in a public school and instead switches and opts to enroll in a private school. For average students, they can receive up to 90% of the statewide DSA average allotment, with the remaining 10% being reserved for the district. That'll be about $5,000. But if students have individualized education plan, or if they are students from low-income families, then they may receive 100% of the average allotment. Those funds may be spent on private schools, on tutoring, on materials, even on certain homeschooling activities. And what's important to remember is that the only eligibility requirement to access these funds will be if the student has been enrolled in public school for 100 consecutive days. So this was a surprise piece of legislation that I think we could expect was one of the deals that brought together a lot of the budget negotiations at the very end of the session. It certainly caught us by surprise when the legislature processed the bill very quickly in the last week of the session. And it's widely expected to be a game changer and one of the most expansive school choice pieces of legislation that's been enacted in the entire country. And one final note is that the funds will be administered by the Office of the State Treasurer. So this will be certainly an interesting piece of legislation that may affect our school district finances going forward.
It's interesting too. This particular bill made it on the front page of the Washington Post newspaper. First for Nevada.
Yeah. So moving on to our next slide, a big focus of the governor and the legislature this session was on cracking down on bullying, on improving our procedures to combat and deal with incidents of bullying. The main piece of legislation came from the governor's office, and that's SB 504. This bill completely rewrote the definition of bullying. It's a very lengthy definition now that I would expect we will have to spend some time making sure our staff is aware of and well trained in. It also sets up a very aggressive investigation timeline for reports of bullying with same-day parental notification for the alleged victim and bully of any reported incident. Investigations must be completed within 2 school days, although there is a 1-day exception if a good faith effort is made and the investigation is not able to be completed. It also establishes a statewide Office of Safe and Respectful Learning. That will provide a 24-hour hotline where parents can report incidents or problems in dealing with their schools. And that office will also administer outreach and anti-bullying training to students and parents and staff to make sure everybody's on the same page. One other thing worth noting is the passage of AB 112, which expands the legislature's intent to provide safe and respectful learning environments, not just for students, but also for staff. So ensuring that staff and adults are not bullying each other as well was an expressed intent of the legislature.
Is that a statewide office?
Yes, sir, it is.
It'll be part of the Department of Education, state level. So we have a much longer list that Superintendent Davis and I and Scott got to go through yesterday, and assigning a lot of pieces of legislation to members of our leadership team. So we can certainly go there if you like, but we are working closely to make sure that the right people who are going to be administering a lot of this legislation are intimately familiar with it. We'll be working, a lot of this legislation requires either policies at the state board level or the local level, so we'll be working to make sure that our policies are updated and reflect the current status of legislation. As I mentioned, a lot of authority at the State Board of Education level, and so I think as a district we'll be making some changes to how we deal with the State Board of Education, or how we interact with them on a more regular basis and watch those even more intently. And then we've got some meetings already set up to meet with our employee associations and groups and people who are more interested in having kind of a face-to-face dialogue. You know, you may hear us sort of interject our own opinions. A lot of legislative intent and and thought and goes into these things and doesn't necessarily translate through the legal language. And so that's the value that Scott and I can provide to our staff is here's why this was put in there and here's what it means and here's what they hope to achieve with this. And so I think that's really important for us to have that dialogue with our team. So we're here, we survived. We hope we represented our district well, and I think a lot of good things hopefully will come as a result of that effort.
You know, that's terrific, and you know, when reading these bills, you probably need a chart, like, you know, AD 501 AD all the way through BC, timeline at the top.
1,000 bills.
Because these bills, they should have one date, but they've got them all over the world, the map, and it seems to me that districts say, oh, we have time for that, and then it sneaks up on you. So I don't know how you're going to track it, but
we have an idea.
Tough.
We have a plan already of how
We have
we
a
will be
plan.
tracking each one to make sure we're compliant with the law. And if you have questions about a particular bill, it will be assigned to either myself or Chief or Lindsay. So we have a plan of action as we move forward.
I do have a question. Did anything happen with collective bargaining?
There's a number of bills about collective bargaining. Let me get to my list here to make sure I
How
don't
did
miss
they? I knew there were
anything.
several floating around. How did they land?
So I would say, I didn't bring my one with SB 92. I would say there's 4 main bills that dealt with collective bargaining. One requires us to post a copy of a collective bargaining agreement 3 days before adopting it at a public hearing. And so I think that's just some transparency measures that we can comply with. SB 168 basically allows local government employers to reopen collective bargaining agreements during a period of fiscal emergency. So that was new language that was added. And then SB 241 was a bill particularly dealing with school administrators and collective bargaining. And to be honest, I can read this to you. It's sort of complex. But things like anyone making over $120,000 be restricted from participating in an employee association, changing the number of days they have to give notice in order to bargain, makes principals at-will employees for the first 3 years of their employment, provides avenues for termination under certain circumstances, also requires other school administrators to reapply for their positions every 5 years. So lots of changes to administrator collective bargaining, that lots of components of that. So we'll be working with our team as we go into negotiations. I know that will be big changes for us. I'll say the Administrators Association, by the time the bill had been amended significantly, was in support of the legislation. So, and then Senate Bill 92 was a piece of legislation that dealt with teacher collective bargaining as opposed to administrator collective bargaining.
Mm-hmm.
Also included some language around turnaround schools. Remind me about SB 92. Reduction in force language, which we've already bargained into our contract, but basically mandates a particular order when you're doing a reduction in force of
That's
teaching
right.
staff of how you would determine, as opposed to being based solely
Not
on
seniority.
seniority.
Yeah, so
It would require, I think, disciplinary action and then ineffective, minimally effective based on
Evaluation,
performance. And there was one more. Mutual placement language. So if you had an ineffective teacher or minimally effective teacher that was transferring, and this is outside of my knowledge base, so I'm saying words that I don't know what they mean, but the principal would have to agree to receiving that teacher who had been deemed minimally or ineffective. And if the principal did not agree, then the superintendent would ultimately have discretion about where that teacher could be placed. But that all affects bargaining for administrators.
Well,
Oh, go ahead.
I was just gonna thank you and Scott for the work. I was just as happy for you that it didn't go into overtime, so to speak, no special session. But
Right.
you know, going in, there were a lot of things to be concerned about, and you continued to make sure that we were aware of that. But at the end of the day, you guys you performed miracles down there. A lot of really important priorities for the district were accomplished, and certainly in no small part to the work of yourself and the staff as they went down and did things that were necessary. But I can't even imagine what that must have been like. But I really thank you, because at the end of the day, it wasn't half bad.
I like to think that. Thank you very much. This is what we sign up for. This is our job. We're part of a team, and we're happy to do it.
Dr. McCleary?
I think that much of the success is based upon the power of the relationships that are created by Lindsay and now, of course, Scott, with all of the legislators. It's so important for people to be able to count on someone and that they're telling them the truth and that they know that their word is good. And so I really need to commend you as well, because I think you not only represented the school district with impunity, you are a role model for many, many other lobbyists, shall we say.
And I think putting together statewide, like the business people and teachers and administrators and parents and everything, really helped this time. I think they heard it from all areas in Nevada, so it was a great plan. Thank you both.
Try to think of the word that's flipped right now.
That's could be possible action, but I don't know what it'd be.
We just took it. Thank you. And actually, we should also thank Interim Superintendent Davis for your leadership down there. I know you ran back and forth a lot and created relationships, maximized those that were there, and I'm sure that contributed to the success in a large way.
I agree.
Next, you just got to stay there because you're in the next one. Staff presentation regarding passage of SB 411 by the 2015 Nevada Legislature in consideration of adopting of a resolution establishing a public schools overcrowding and repair needs committee to recommend imposition of certain taxes as described in section 2.5 of SB 411 for consideration by the voters at the 2016 general election to fund the capital projects of the district. And before you say a word, I want to thank you for jumping on this ball immediately, because 2016 is a hair away and I don't have too many of them. So, but I want to thank you. I was amazed to see it on this agenda, but it's the staff coming together and getting right on this right ahead, because it'll be here before you know it.
Thank you, President Mayor. I'm going to just quickly start this off and hand it over to these guys. I'll say we were jumping the gun a little because we're anxious to get started, and we didn't even find out until about 6 o'clock last night that the governor actually signed the bill yesterday. We were going to have to pull it if he hadn't signed it yet. So we were excited to find out that he actually signed the bill yesterday. So we were able to move forward as quickly as we were hoping. But as you heard earlier, Senate Bill 411 was sponsored by our champion, Senator Smith, on behalf of the district to address the rest of the capital needs. For me, it's hard because the rollover bond extension was such a huge win, but it's like ages ago. I'm not even excited about it anymore. We're on to the next challenge. So this is the next challenge, and the bill gave us the authority to create a committee that will help us advocate to be able to raise additional resources to meet the capacity needs of our school. So for those of you that have been around and following this a while, we did a similar process in 2007 at the legislature through SB 154 that ultimately created a ballot question in 2008, WCSD 1, that was ultimately not successful. But we didn't give up. We tried again last session with Assembly Bill 46. And then this session again with our school construction needs and the rollover bond extension. So this is part of a package, a continuing story for our district that we've been talking about the needs of meeting the facility needs of our kids for a very long time. So how it works is basically if you authorize this committee to exist, then a group of stakeholders will convene and discuss what the needs are and what the best way to fund it is. And so they will consider how much money we should ask for and the taxes we can consider and what the ballot question should look like. As you can see from this list up here, we have a diverse membership of people who have been part and have a stake in this. The school district does not have a voting voice on this board, and that was by design because this is not necessarily our idea. We want the community to come together and validate that idea and be able to push that forward. And so I'm sure you'll recognize a lot of people on this list that have been supporting us for a very long time, and we are hoping to count on their support again going forwards. So I'll let Pete.
Pete Etchart, Chief Operations Officer. Now I'm going to be quick. You've seen this before. I just have 3 slides here to kind of put in context exactly what the SB 411 committee will be considering. Right now, you've seen this number before. Our current school needs, the $255 million. That's the 1 elementary school, 2 middle schools, and 1.5 high schools that are needed right now with no growth projected. That's right now. The number is over $600 million when we start talking about what the needs are over the next 10 years, and that's in today's dollars. And that's also based on the regional planning consensus forecast, which I'll talk about in just a second. The second number is just being consistent with AB 46, is what we've been saying all along, that we need $25 million a year for repair and renovations. That's $20 million a year to keep up with repair. It's $5 million a year for the renovations of our older schools. Now, this is something new that we haven't talked about in great detail, but you heard about it at the concurrent meeting with Reno, Sparks, and Washoe County. And these are the numbers from the EDON EPIC forecast. And that was basically community experts coming together to really talk about what is the forecast for growth. And what they came out with was 3 different scenarios, kind of a high, middle, and a low. Using that middle forecast, which is what we've been using for the next 5 years, they're showing a 1.7% per year enrollment growth. Now that's 21% higher than the consensus forecast numbers that we were using when we started talking about needing 14 schools. So we're going to be updating all of our numbers. We already have, but we're going to actually have a fuller presentation coming forward. But to kind of put in context really fast, that 1.7% average population growth, if we look at those 5-year numbers, that means an additional 910 students compared to what I was telling you before with the consensus forecast. Basically, the numbers go in 2019 from 4,408 new students to 5,318. And to also give you a little bit of context on this, if we look at the historic growth of this school district prior to the recession that we had, so we go back from 1988 to 2004, we averaged 3.5% growth. So when we start talking about 1.7% enrollment growth, that's nothing that we haven't experienced before. In fact, we've experienced twice that for a long period of time. So I'm going to be back at the next meeting, and we plan on bringing you kind of a progress report on what the growth committee has been working on for quite some time. We've been meeting for well over a year, and we've had a lot of great discussion, but we're going to bring together to you a draft regulation regarding overcrowding and kind of where we're at. We want to get your input on that. So again, on this, it shows some of the other facts that you've heard. We have a $70 million a year need. That's probably very conservative. The bonding authority that Lindsay talked about with SB 119 provides us $20 million a year, and our shortfall at a minimum is $50 million.
Pete, Matt,
yes.
When you look at those numbers, I just written this down as a question. On the previous slide, we talked about we needed $25 million. You said $20 million for repairs, and then $5 million for renovations. How is that number, or is that number reflected in the $70 million?
It is. It is $50 million basically for construction, $20 million for the repair.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
This one kind of sums it up. This is actually my favorite slide, and this was actually the one I've shown you before from Mike Kazmierski. Now, I have to also caveat this by saying that this is also based on the old consensus forecast numbers. So it's going to go nothing but up, and if the numbers are 21% higher, I mean, you can just kind of add on to this chart. And what I really like about this is that it shows the total need for the district. It also, I look forward to providing these numbers to the SB 411 committee so they can independently look at our needs, decide if we are truly in need of a ballot issue, and then coming up with whatever that would be if they decide to go forward. So I think, these numbers speak for themselves. It shows that bottom line, what the governor and the legislature approved for us, basically just covers that $20 to $25 million a year we need to keep our schools going. It does nothing for growth. And I know that's going to be a hard message out in the community as we go forward, because I know a lot of people think, they just approved all this, our worries are over. And believe me, I've gotten lots of calls, as a lot of people here in communications and capital projects. And obviously we know that's not true. He did a fantastic job for us in providing these resources, but it doesn't help us on the capital side for many, many years. It is till 2024 until we start having significant revenue that we can actually start building schools on top of what we need to maintain our existing schools. So with that, I'll turn it over to Riley.
Riley Sutton with the communications department, and fortunately or unfortunately, Pete and Lindsay have stolen most of my thunder here, so I'll be very brief. The main thing now is whether and when the board decides to adopt the resolution that you have in your packet establishing the committee. As soon as that happens, it's off to the races, and the committee is, for all intents and purposes, separate from the Washoe County School District. And as Lindsay said, that's really by design, so that it's the community that's going to ultimately decide upon any additional funding. So it needs to be the community that's making this decision. The school district provides administrative support, and in terms of a financial impact for the district, what that is yet to be determined based upon when and how frequently the committee starts meeting. The superintendent calls the first meeting, though at that meeting the committee elects its own chair, and then the chair and the committee would set a meeting schedule. What they need from us will determine how much that administrative support, how much of that goes into it from the districts. From a communication standpoint, really, we're just going to keep doing what we have been doing and letting the community know what the issues are, what the needs are, and let them hopefully come up with a workable long-term solution for the district. There are, as Pete said, a lot of misconceptions that the recently passed budget and the tax increases solve our problems across the board, which obviously, and as Pete just said, they do not. So that's a main focus of our communications, and making sure folks know that there is a distinct difference between what goes into the classroom learning and the walls and the roof of the classroom itself, and that they're funded differently. And we're lacking funding on the one, though we are incredibly happy with our legislators and the governor for the funding that they've approved for the classroom side. And as soon as we have a definitive resolution establishing the committee, and then the committee is set up and starts meeting and figuring out its timeline, I will be able to come back with a broader timeline of the communications from the district side, which will of course be dependent upon what the committee needs. And that wraps up my end.
I guess the only thing I would add is that per your first comment, President Mayor, about thank you for coming so quickly, if you're prepared, we are prepared for you to adopt the resolution and call a committee together. So you can wait and discuss if you'd like, but we're prepared to move forward if you are.
I do have one public comment on this, so we'll take that and then move from there. Rob Brower? Brent, okay. You have 3 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'm Rob Benner. I'm here representing the building construction trades in Northern Nevada. I have been working with a diverse community group for a long time on finding a solution to construction and the repairs needed for the school district. There were other community leaders that wanted to be here today, but unfortunately due to scheduling conflicts they couldn't. When we were trying to get AB 46 passed through the Washoe County Commission, I knocked on a lot of doors and talked to a lot of people in the community. One of the things I took away was that the community sees this not as a Washoe County board or district issue, but more of a community issue that the community needs to deal with. Since it's a community issue, the community wants the opportunity to come together to solve it. That's why a broad variety of interest supporting Senator Smith's bill, SB 411. Please vote to set up the committee for SB 411 to let the community begin work right away to come up with a solution for this problem. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your input. Appreciate it. Also, I learned something in your presentation. I've heard of people having favorite tunes and favorite foods, but I've never heard of somebody having a favorite chart.
Only Pete's.
So it's a new one here. What's the desire of the...
I'd like to make a motion if there's no comments.
Go ahead.
Anyone?
Oh, I'm ready to go.
I think that's her comment, huh? Okay, then, Mr. President, I move that pursuant to SB 411, the Board of Trustees hereby establishes by resolution a Public Schools Overcrowding and Repair Committee to recommend the imposition of one or more taxes as described in Section 2.5 of SB 411 for consideration by the voters at the 2016 general election to fund the capital projects of the school district.
Is there a second? It's been seconded by Dr. McCleary. All those in, any discussion? None? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same signal. Carried unanimously. Let the record show. And thank you, all of you, for your hard work, and we sure appreciate it. And the 63,000 little kids that run around on our parks and streets and schools and stuff, appreciate your immediate attention to this. Believe me, that's who really benefits, are those kids sitting behind those desks.
Okay.
So thank you very much from them. Okay? And we'll move on to 501, update, discussion, and possible direction to staff regarding the 2015-2016 budget.
President Mayor, Interim Superintendent Davis, members of the board, and Student Representative Carlson. For the record, Tom Sosinski, Chief Financial Officer. And normally when we're doing these budget updates, I would have Mike Schroeder, our budget director, here, but he is feverishly working on our amended final budget, which will come back to you on June 23rd to meet the 30-day deadline post-legislative close. I do want to take this opportunity to extend a great thanks to the governor, the legislature, for all their great and historic work on the district's budget. Lindsay and Scott gave you all that information, and I also want to extend my thanks to each of them for all of their great work. If you would ask me, we would have accomplished what we've accomplished in this session beforehand, I would have said no way, but this has been, again, great and historic work, so I want to applaud all the efforts that have gone on there. As I noted, Mike is working through the details. We're reaching out to the department to get information, working through Lindsay and Scott to get information, so we've got a great challenge ahead of us, but we'll do what we can to amend the final budget and bring that to you back on the 23rd, and really that's all I have to say unless there's any questions.
Any questions?
I am very happy. Very happy.
Good.
I can tell. And it's not just the Raider chair.
Well, that was the added bonus today. So.
Okay. That's great. Any questions or comments?
All right. Thank you very much.
This was for possible action, but I don't think there's
no
any
action
next.
today.
Okay.
Keep working.
Thank you. And now we're moving on to item 6.01. Discussion, possible approval of resolutions. What?
You got a public comment?
Oh, on the budget? Oh, we had a public comment on budget.
I didn't see it here. Pardon me?
Okay.
Come on up.
And then just get your card afterwards, right? On the
Yeah.
budget piece.
My name is John Ippolito, and I did have a comment on the budget. I know there were some good things that happened down there this session, but if you look at the education budget 2716, there's $9 million and 9 new positions at the Nevada Department of Education, and that's $9 million for 2 years, and that is for data systems management. They're going to hire 9 new people to keep track of our kids and punish our teachers. And this is the thing that nobody's talking about. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Item 6.01, discussion and possible approval of resolution to lease cellular communication sites at Reed High School and Vaughn Middle School for possible action. Discussion and possible action to amend the scope of work of Simon. What's this? Is this supposed to be?
No,
in
that's
there?
a misprint.
Okay, well, they run together on my copy, so. Okay, we'll stop right there.
Thank you very much. For the record, my name is Mike Boster, School Planner with Capital Projects. This item outlines 2 cell tower proposals, a renewal of an existing lease at Reed High School, and a new installation at Vaughn Middle School. This is the first of 2 required meetings for the lease of district property as required by NRS. If you agree to move forward with these 2 proposals, the resolutions to lease must be adopted. And then these resolutions will be published twice in the local newspaper and posted in public offices throughout Reno, Sparks, and Washoe County. Bids for each lease will then be received and opened no less than 3 weeks later, tentatively set for the July 28th board meeting. NRS requires the district to obtain 2 appraisals for each of the properties to be leased. And for those, we have 2 values. The first of these is from the 2015 Federal Lands Rental Fee Schedule for Communication Sites. And that lists the value for each site at $7,763.32. And then we also got an independent appraisal from a firm named Steel in the Air that lists the Vaughn site at a range of $16,800 to $21,600, and the Reed site at $9,600 to $12,000 per year. Each property has specific recommended conditions of approval, which are included in the independent assessment and on the resolutions. And I should know, we've worked with these carriers over the years to modify some of the conditions from Steel in the Air or any of our other appraisal sources, and we've modified some of the conditions to better suit the district. For Vaughn, a new 100-foot tower and equipment enclosure are proposed, and district staff has met with the Vaughn administrators and Verizon reps to select a location on the school site that will not disrupt the operations of the school. No new equipment or towers are anticipated for the Sprint Nextel renewal at Reed. It's already existing. Reed administrative staff has said that there have been no complaints from parents or neighbors regarding the existing Sprint Nextel tower, or in fact the existing Verizon tower on the site. Reed has 2 towers in existence at the football stadium. Staff recommends that the board sets the minimum bid for each lease, then adopt the 2 resolutions to intent to lease property at Reed and Vaughn, and then set the opening of the bids for the July 28th, 2015 meeting. That concludes my presentation. Please let me know if you have any questions.
I do.
Yes, sir.
At Reed, you're not building more towers there, are you?
No, sir. It's an existing
It's just
tower.
putting on the one that's, one of the ones that are there.
Correct.
already.
In fact, there will be no new equipment added. It's a renewal of a lease that is expiring. And we've run this through our purchasing department and our business office. We're treating this renewal as a brand new lease. So we have to go back through the NRS process to award that to, in this case, Sprint, but we have to give the opportunity to other carriers, if they come forward with a better offer, to put their antennas on that existing tower.
Okay. And what's the power on that one? Is it one of those ultra?
On the Sprint tower, it's one of our older towers. Technology has changed since our first towers went up in 1997. There's a combination between voice and data. Data is a much higher value commodity. This Sprint tower has been upgraded over the years. I couldn't tell you what the mix between voice and data is on this particular one, whether it's the 4G, LTE, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
But they do upgrade their equipment with our permission over the course of the years.
Okay, and it's not adding new little huts to the... Well,
No, sir, not at Reed, no.
And at Vaughn, though, you're adding a tower because you haven't had one before.
Yes, sir, that is correct. It would be a new tower and an equipment shelter as well. They have a generator and then they call it telco that connects the tower to the system and to power.
Okay. Mr. Smith?
Can you give me those dollar amounts again?
Oh, sure. You bet. Again, we have to get the 2 appraisals. I know I threw a few numbers at you there. The first source we use is that Federal Lands Rental Fee Schedule. Now, for each side, they don't differentiate. This source doesn't differentiate between Reed and Vaughn. It just says for this metropolitan area under our population, the value is $77.63 and 32 cents. So no matter which one you choose, you 77.63 is what the federal schedule says. Now our independent assessment, if we look at Vaughn, Steel in the Air established a value for Vaughn at $16,800 to $21,600. They gave us a range. And they did the same thing with Reed, of 9,600 to 12,000 per year. And those values are obviously lower for Reed. It very likely has to do with the number of subscribers to Sprint versus Verizon. Verizon's the number one carrier in the nation, 133 million subscribers.
And now you're getting to my point.
Gotcha.
It seems like we're giving these guys a heck of a deal. I mean, these guys make millions, billions of dollars a year. We're going to give them some of our school space. Just because we're a public entity, we're going to give them a deal. I don't think we're going to get enough money, even if we went with our independent person, $21,600, charge them a percent, hit them. We need money for our school maintenance. We need money for our projects. I don't think giving up our space is worth $21,600. That's my point. I don't think we're getting enough money to make it worth it. And maybe it's because other districts you can answer to me the reason why. I don't know why it is. But to me, I'm seeing huge conglomerates with huge boards, guys with yachts that make more money than 15 superintendents. And we get 21 grand? I don't know.
Understood.
Chris Cobb, Chief Facilities Management Officer. Nick, you as a board could actually dictate different pricing. By NRS, what we do is we go by what the law says is we go out and get 2 appraisals and present those numbers to you as a board. That here's the suggestion based on the appraisals, what we would ask or you guys would dictate that goes out as a minimum and a bid. Now, the board has all pleasure to turn around and direct staff and say, no, this is the number that we want to dictate. Correct, Mike?
That's correct, right? The board can set the price.
Is there any way we can find out what other districts might be charging for space in their schools?
We've done that over the last couple of cell towers. And we are in the ballpark. Some do get more, some do get less. I hate to be vague like that, but there are some districts we did a study in Iowa that did receive more revenue than we do, but there are other in smaller communities that receive less. We're in a category in that federal land schedule of population. They base it on the population of the MSA, the Metropolitan Service Area. So that probably plays some into the independent survey as well, assessment.
Okay.
Any other?
I just wanted to let Trustee Smith know that we actually had an in-depth discussion about the pricing or the cost. Was it a year, less than a year ago, wasn't it?
May have been on Worcester, yes, ma'am.
Yes, it was.
That's right. And so I think a lot of us had the impression that it would bring in more money, but evidently it just doesn't. Is that? Remind me of that. Can you remind us of that conversation? What we
Typically, as a district, we are contacted by providers looking at areas of service. And while this is opened up to other service providers, typically they're looking to put a tower where they see a lack in their service. So even though we're opening it up, the amount of competition you're getting is not really there. So we can, use a board can direct that there's a higher bid. You could still get prices that are lower than that. And you have, granted we have great spaces that this can work at. But they will look at other spaces as well. So it's difficult. I'd love to get, 100,000 a year. I've got ways to spend it on buildings. But what does the market bear and what competition is there for it?
Right.
So based upon your experience and back to what Trustee Ruggiero said, the research that was done last year, is this about what the market bears?
If you look at the difference between the federal schedule, which is very low at $7,700 or whatever, $7,700. Then the independent survey, obviously, it goes up to double that. So this is why we reach out to an independent assessment firm to get that. They're experts in the field. This is a firm out of Florida that we've used for several years now. And for lack of a better term, they do know their stuff. And this is what the market bears right now. But I agree with Mr. Cobb. I'd love to say let's make 50 grand a year on these things instead of 20. But yes, ma'am, I would say that this is what the market bears.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Any other comments? Okay. We have a citizen's request to speak, Mr. Eppolito.
Try not to make this a habit. The cell tower issue came up a few years ago in Incline. There's still one trustee that was here when this came up. Okay, you were here, and Trustee Green, I think, was the president of the board at the time. I remember the day that Trustee Green called me, and he said the schools are not in the business of, I can't remember his exact words, basically helping cell phone companies profit. We stopped it in Incline in about 5 minutes once the parents found out that it was going up at the school. It was my understanding, and it's been a few years, but it was my understanding that the district was going to change the way they, and you have to go back and look at the minutes to see if I'm right, change the way they approved new cell phone towers like the one you guys are talking about right now at Vaughn Middle School. If that's a neighborhood where there's houses close by, people that live close by don't want them. The problem is they don't know until after they go up. And the reason we were able to stop it in Incline is because that was right after the battle with the IB, and I still had the email list for all the parents, and we got like 300 signatures on the petition to stop it in 5 minutes. So you guys said, no, we don't want that. But I thought that Washoe County School District was going to change the policy before approving these cell towers and check with the community first. I could be wrong, but go back and look at the minutes, please, before you approve the one at Vaughn. Thank you.
Yeah, if I may respond to that
Yes.
briefly. Back on March 11th of 2014, in a previous action, this board, not this exact board, but the Board of Trustees, received information on cellular companies and whether or not the district was interested in continuing to pursue cell sites on towers where they worked for us. And the unanimous result was yes, we were directed to continue to at least accept offers from cell tower companies. We're not actively marketing ourselves as a place for Verizon, AT&T to come, but we are accepting them and running them through the NRS process and through this board.
Okay.
Just as a follow-up question, you said the company in Florida, do they get the bids for us? Help me understand that. Can they the ones that we've worked with in the past?
Yes, ma'am. What Steel in the Air is, it's a gentleman that owns it is an attorney who has worked in the past for the cellular industry.
Mm-hmm.
He started a company because he knows the kind of the back roads of all of how these things work. So what they do, he provides us an assessment of value. He doesn't call it an appraisal because that comes down to kind of an exact number. An assessment of value is why we get a range. So he's just one source. Steel in the Air is one source of our 2 required appraisal sources for the NRS requirement.
Mm-hmm. So does he benefit at all from his estimations or his the ranges that he provides for us?
Yes, ma'am. We pay him.
I mean, other than that.
Not other than the fee that we pay him for providing that assessment. And NRS does require the school district to pay for that assessment when we do appraisals and assessments.
It's like getting a home appraisal. You have the appraiser come out and
yes,
take a
ma'am.
look, and
he doesn't get
they don't have a dog in the fight, so to speak. But
no, ma'am. He does not get a cut of the deal. No.
Okay. Thank you.
What is the pleasure?
From those of you that were here before, do you remember any feedback
Well,
from?
I think that was an upgrade of power too. It was not these regular cell towers. It was one more powerful, and we didn't approve it. Yes.
So being kind of new to this, I like the district to make money, but also hearing the public comment, I know how I would feel if somebody put a cell phone tower in my kid's playground and I happen to have the yard that backs up to my kid's playground. So when they do it, do they make like the ugly green tree? I mean, what are they gonna do? What do you know what the proposal is for Vaughn, since that would be a new site?
Yes, sir, I do. It's incumbent upon, in this case, if it were Verizon to win this particular contract at Vaughn, they have to go through the special use permit process through the City of Reno. City of Reno has certain design requirements for cell towers. They can either make it look like a fake pine tree, or a water tower, or any number of designs that you've seen probably over the years. This one is proposed at least for what they call a stealth monopole, and really what it looks like is like a big can on top of a tower, a tall thin can. So you're not going to have those antennas that stick out, because they are enclosed by it's called a radome that surrounds them. So it just looks like a big, tall black tower. We could have it painted in Vaughn colors or whatever you would want to do. We could ask the provider to do that. But the proposal on the table right now is for what they call a stealth monopole, but depending on what the city of Reno tells them in their special use permit.
I'd like to add to that, the Spark site, let's remember, Reed, this is an existing tower. So it's a renewal of a lease. It's an existing tower that there's been no issues with from the public. Vaughn is a new site, and going through the special use permit process, not only can their planning department put, certain criteria on it, as well as it's publicly noticed, and if there's issues within a neighborhood, they can show up and raise those issues through the city of Reno. And ultimately, the city of Reno can deny it based on what they hear. You as a board, you're authorizing us to move forward and opening bids for it. And then if a carrier is selected, they still have to go through that process.
Okay. Any other? Yes, Dr. McClure.
Is this a matter of hurrying up to get this done? I mean, would another couple of weeks be a detriment to the process?
I would say no, ma'am, other than I believe that your schedule for your meetings does take a bit of a hiatus after.
Right. But I'm just talking about perhaps if we're interested in looking at the minutes from that meeting in relationship to what Mr. Eppolito pointed out. I believe that the communities need to be involved in at least knowing what's going on. So I'm not sure. That's just my opinion. I have no problem, and we've got the minutes from all of those meetings where all of this has been discussed, and perhaps that would give people a little bit more enlightenment and then bring it back to the next meeting. That's just an idea, certainly not anything
You want to make a motion?
Well, I don't know.
Well, if I may, before, perhaps we can approve Reed, because it is already in place, and the community's already been involved in, or they're aware, and it's functional. It's simply a renewal, and then perhaps we go a little. Then appropriate notification can happen. And if there's a picture or something, or a placement, where would it be? Is it going to be in the middle of the yard? Is it? I mean, something you described it for us, so we can have answers to those questions. Should we be asked as well? And contrary to popular belief, we are still meeting every 2 weeks.
Absolutely. In that, with Reed, it is a renewal. It's nearing the end of its lease. And Vaughn, we could definitely come back with a site picture for you and an opportunity, like, as you said, review the minutes and make a more informed decision.
And then at Reed, you can set the minimum bid to whatever we want, right? So wouldn't we want to just go for the highest level as Steel in the Air would give us?
And that is, I believe, what staff is suggesting, is it not, Mike? Is going with the highest.
Yes, sir.
So you'd be asking for $12,000 a year.
I almost wonder if you could ask for more. I'm not in purchasing department, but I do happen to know that it sucks to have to take something down that you built so many years ago and find a new location. So I wonder if you could, squeeze a little bit from them, get an extra few thousand in the name of the kids.
So what I heard him say was you would have to set that amount, right? The board of trustees would have to ask for that amount? You seven need to determine if that's how you're going to direct them.
Well, I think if that's where we're headed, then we shouldn't approve Reed, because you need to go back and look at the minutes. I think Trustee McClory's right. I think if we did have this discussion in depth, and it'll probably be helpful for the new trustees to have this information. But
yes, and
I think staff has done their job as far as recommending what the price should be, what we're asking for. They've used an outside consultant, and I believe that the amount is appropriate. However, if you want time to investigate that, I fully support that, and but we'd have to leave that off the list too. So I'm not ready to make another. I prefer to go with this recommendation by staff.
That's fine.
that one at Reed, it's not going to change anything, right? All they're doing is renewing what's already there. And there's quite a few different carriers there. There's like, I think, 3 poles.
Yes, sir. This is a renewal. Their lease currently will expire on October 10th of 2015. So we do start to run into timing issues to make sure we do get to the board before it does expire. There are 3 carriers at Reed High School. There's a standalone Verizon tower, and then there's this tower that has both a Sprint antenna and a T-Mobile antenna on the same tower. They're co-located.
Yeah.
So there are 3 carriers at Reed.
Saying, and I don't know what you gain by delaying Reed.
I think he wants to up the price.
I think you tell them, if the top end of the price is $12,000, it's gonna cost them how many thousands of dollars to take down their tower and move it if they lose their lease?
They won't take it down.
Charge them an extra $2,000, because are they really gonna take it down?
Well, I'd really
Well.
like to get staff's expertise on that, so I think
agree.
to make a decision to charge more is not appropriate at this meeting. I think we need to send them both back to staff and get their input, or just approve Reed's lease. That's where I'm at.
If I may add one other thing on the Reed in particular, our consultant did recommend an upfront sum of $5,000 immediately from Sprint to pay for contractual and legal review costs on our part. So there is, I guess, a bit of a bonus there that our consultant has recommended, in addition to the increase in the rent from what they're paying now. So there is some, it maybe not as much as Trustee Smith would want it to be, and I tend to agree, but nonetheless, that is your decision to make.
So you're saying there are some additional monies on the table, so to speak,
Yeah.
because of the upfront.
Yes, ma'am, there are. In fact, on the resolution to intend, it's attachment C in your packet, there are 10 conditions for Reed High School. And number 4 is the lessee is to pay an upfront sum of $5,000 to pay for legal and professional contract review costs. So it's something. It's not $100,000 or what have you, but nonetheless, it's a help.
I do concur with Trustee Rosario, and I think that staff has done the work to get the independent review of it, and not because I'm trying to leave money on the table. I'm just not sure if there's money on the table, because the consultant is one that you have confidence in, that has a high level of credibility, and so I'm comfortable with that.
Okay, and just to jump to the Vaughn site, the recommendation is for an upfront option payment of $2,500 on the recommendation. It's interesting that it's a lower amount. However, that's been their standard. When I say there, I mean Steel in the Air has made a standard recommendation for us to charge the carrier when they do a new installation a $2,500 option fee, which means that we're charging them $2,500 to have the option to renew their lease every 5 years. It's an automatic renewal, but we're saying that's going to cost you something.
I see. Okay, good.
Motion.
I'll make a motion.
Okay.
I move that the Board of Trustees adopts one resolution of intent to lease property for the lease of one cellular communications site at Reed High School at the higher of the 2 values as suggested by Steel in the Air, and the rental fee schedule for communications use. Lease amounts received will be deposited into the district's building and sites fund as required by NRS Statute 393.320 and available for capital project improvements as directed by the Washoe County School District Board of Trustees. Receipt of bids will be scheduled for the July 29th, 2015 Board of Trustees meeting.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same signal. Shows unanimous.
Then we can
And
look for it and
then-
come back.
I'm sorry. And then you'll come back a couple weeks on Vaughn, maybe have a parent or a public meeting to see how they feel about it there. I'm
certainly
sure
will.
that Vaughn can use the money for their
We have to
extra
hurry.
things.
School's almost out.
Well, yeah, but it's for a long period, more than a week. Okay,
We'll put something together and come back, if not the next meeting, the following.
okay, great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you
you for
very
bringing back the
much.
information.
Moving right along to, does anybody need a break? Okay, we're going to take, let's take a 10-minute break, 4 o'clock, we'll reconvene. We're on break back there. We'll call the meeting back to order. And we're going on to 6.04, since 6:03 we have 02, I'm sorry. 6:02? Yes, 6:02. And 6:03 was postponed to the end of the meeting. So 6:02.
Good
Hi.
afternoon, President Mayor, Interim Superintendent Davis, and members of the board. I'm Dawn Huckabee, Chief Human Resources Officer. With me is Katie Simon Holland of Simon & Associates. And we're here to discuss with you for possible action the change of the scope of work that is tied to conducting a survey of the public and our community on the characteristics wanted in Washoe County School District Superintendent. So in your documents, attachment A, you have a set of 4, what I would say minor but important changes to the scope of work that we wanted to go over with you. As a bit of history, on April 28th is when the board approved the contract with Simon & Associates, which included the scope of work at that time. So if I could just take you quickly through, the first change on the scope of work is on task 1.1. And that change really involves the fact that while Simon & Associates, Katie Simon Holland in particular, met with most of the board members, what we didn't do, and so we wanted to strike that from the scope of work, is we didn't create a subcommittee for the interview questions and an interview list. Instead, what happened is, and that's related to task 2.1 as well, as in the discussion with the board, we decided to bring the actual survey questions and survey to the full board. And so instead of what is on task 2.1, you would see that on May 19th, we brought that survey to the full board instead of being approved by the board president and vice president. Again, that was on the May 19th board meeting. Another change, which is important, is under task 3.1. And in that scope of work, what it says is that the Washoe County School District would be responsible for the data entry and translation of the paper surveys. We felt that it was very important to the integrity of the process, and the whole reason for hiring an external company to handle the survey was to keep district staff out of the middle of those surveys. So to have staff doing the data entry on those paper surveys and the translation meant that we were responsible for that information. We wanted to make sure that that was remained with our external consultant on that, and so Ms. Simon and her company has taken on that responsibility, and that needed to be reflected in the amended scope of work. And then the last change is to strike the online reports for the $3,500. So again, they're minor, but they're important changes that we felt needed to come before the board and the public to reflect what those changes were.
Ms. Simon?
Thank you, Mr. President and members of the board. Katie Simon Holland for the record. And again, it's a great privilege and an honor to be part of this process with you. And just one other addition I would make on the removal of the interview list of stakeholders. I did confer with your legal counsel, and it was upon his advice that we not try to establish a list of people to interview. So we took that out. And we are well underway and legal counsel did give us permission to give you a quick update. As of midnight last night, we have 2,193 responses, which is great.
That's great, yeah.
And we have about 49% of those people are parents. About 33% are employees of one level or another. About 12% are community members. 5% are students, which is great.
Yes.
We have a good range of length of residence in Washoe County. Most are women, which is not, that's not surprising. They're 71% female and 29% male. 80% white or Caucasian, non-Hispanic, 12% Hispanic, 8% other. So we're getting a good distribution of folks who are responding. And we've also had great response from the business community representatives being willing to share the link to the survey. EDAWN published it. You might have seen in their update that came out today to all of their members and their email list. And the builders just sent it out to all of their members via email to encourage them to take the survey, and then the chamber is doing so as well. So we've had great response, appreciate the coverage in the media, and would welcome any questions.
Any questions?
Is this also when we need to talk about the deadline, since is this just a conversation about scope? But I thought just scope.
Well, the extension, though, is a part of the action today, is to extend the contract till the 30th of July so that we could get it over into the new fiscal year and have the opportunity to bring it forward to you for the final report in July. I know we've gone back and forth about dates, but so yes, you're right, Trustee Taylor.
And that is in our title.
Okay.
It is.
Okay. Any questions? Then the chair will entertain the motion. I don't have to choose between hands here.
I always do the motion. Okay, I'll do this motion. I move that the Board of Trustees approve the amended scope of work from Simon & Associates and the extension of the contract for services to July 30th, 2015.
Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same signal. So carry, let the record show unanimously.
Thank you.
Thank you very
Thank you.
much. Okay. Okay, 6.03 has been moved to the end of the meeting. So we'll go to 6.04. Consideration of whether to issue a request for proposal for external legal counsel to serve as independent counsel to the Board of Trustees, on which the board may vote whether to issue such an RFP, and may also provide direction to the staff regarding the contents of the RFP. And the business department is here.
President Mayor, Interim Superintendent Davis, members of the board, Student Representative Carlson. For the record, Tom Szynski, Chief Financial Officer, and with me is our Director of Procurement and Contracts, Andrea Sullivan. So I think we start the conversation off by you folks are going to have a discussion, and based on the outcome of that discussion, Andrea either will walk you through a process or not. So with that basic background, please ask us any questions or proceed.
You know, I have a question. Couldn't we just extend Mr. Malloy's contract for another year?
Yes, so that's part of the decision here is whether or not to issue an RFP. Right now, you've approved a contract for Mr. Malloy's firm that is set to expire on September 30th of this year. You are not required by law to go out to RFP. There are certain types of professional services that are exempt from bidding, and this is one of them. However, you could choose that it's in your best interest to do an RFP to see what other firms have to offer. That's totally a decision that's up to you to determine what's in your best interest, whether you prefer to enter into a longer term contract directly with Mr. Malloy's firm or with another firm, or whether you want to go out to RFP. You certainly would not be violating the statutory bidding laws if you did not decide to do a solicitation.
And
yes, in light of your comment.
Yes.
Ms. Sullivan is absolutely correct in everything she said. I want it to be clear, however, that under no circumstances, even if you wanted to, could you extend my contract under the agenda as it's written today?
Correct.
We'd have to agendalize it in a future meeting.
Right, you would just then decide today not to move forward with issuing an RFP.
You know, I just feel that we got him on board and he's working good. And happens all the time, just to extend his for another year and vote on it in a future meeting. I just think it's worthwhile.
As long as the motion doesn't say that.
Well,
Right, that isn't something we can do today.
You can't extend my contract today.
But we could ask to have it put on a future agenda.
Oh, sure. That's up to you.
Any thoughts?
I mean, I've had the pleasure of working with Mr. Malloy, and certainly I haven't found any complications or anything like that with it, and we could do something like that, and to be reviewed on the fiscal year basis, maybe to June 30th, and then it keeps track with the fiscal year. We could go from there. I mean, I'd certainly be willing to
Make
consider
it
that.
from June 30th if we so chose.
Yeah,
to do that.
2016, not 2015.
Yeah.
2016.
Any other? Yes.
I agree with that. So are we just not going to do anything with this
I think
then,
then
or
the
just say
action that
no?
I would ask you to take then, if that's the desire of the
Well, I don't
board, is
know.
that you would decide not to issue an RFP. Then we can begin work on the other things. His current contract does not expire until September 30th. That would give me time to work with him on establishing a new contract, a longer-term contract. I'll hold him to the fire that he said it would be at a lower rate if we gave him a longer-term contract. I could do that in lieu of issuing an RFP for these services.
So you think we should vote no on this particular
I mean,
item
I can't
here?
tell you how to vote. You have to
No,
vote.
but I mean-
But if you don't want me to issue an RFP, then I would ask that you bring that to a vote so that we can move on.
That is listed as an alternative.
Okay. Yes.
I'm just thinking, with all respect to Mike, I think, this is an amount of money that we do spend, and yes, we are at a lower rate right now, but I think, we should see how the chips may fall and do an RFP. Maybe not today issue that directive, but sometime in the future, to see that, we put it out there. We're not just picking a guy out of the weeds because we're using him for right now, but that we went and did the best thing that's fiscally possible, put that rate and knowledge together, and see what else may come about.
Okay.
When would you like to do that?
I don't think there's a rush to do that right away. We have a contract with them at least until September 30th, and I'm not one to break contracts early unless there's a dire need.
If I might, Trustee Smith, if we were to issue an RFP, it is a long process, and so that's why we're bringing this to you now. I'm already 2 weeks behind where I wanted to be as far as getting this done. It's a thorough process. It takes some time. And the timeline that I've attached, if we were to issue an RFP, would allow us to award it either at the August 25th meeting or the September 8th meeting, and his contract expires September 30th. Now, we can still come back to you with another item to extend his contract for a period of several months if you wanted to then issue it at a later date. But if we wanted to do an RFP prior to the expiration of his contract, now is the time to get going on that.
Well, after hearing what you just said, and that's your department, you know that stuff better than me, then I would say, in fairness to anybody who would be interested in also representing the Board of Trustees, we should do an RFP.
Okay. Is there a motion on this to one way or another? Yes.
I'd like to make a motion to not issue an RFP at this time and to move forward as suggested by Dr. Taylor up through the end of the fiscal year 6/30/16. Does that work?
Yeah, that's, I think that's beyond the agenda. Yeah.
Oh.
Half of it's fine and half of it is not.
Well, I'm known for that.
Yeah, no, well, yeah, I appreciate
Well, I
it.
just I just don't want us to issue an RFP.
Is that the motion?
Yeah.
Is there a second to that?
I second that.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Any more discussion? Seeing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The vote passes 4-1. Let the record show. 4 yeses, 1 no.
And then, Mr. President, we would consider extending the contract through the fiscal, and then we can always at that point
Sure.
consider if you want to do.
Dr.
RFP.
Taylor, if I might, I don't know that there's a need to have it expire at a fiscal year. I have 100 contracts that expire at the fiscal year. All I think we need to worry about is that his contract expires on September 30th, so we could go annually from there if we wanted to, or we could pick any date, and I think we'll agendize this extension of his contract or new contract for a future meeting and come to you guys with some options for terms as far as, how long you want the contract to be in effect for. Okay.
And,
Great.
You guys do such a good job in your staff report of giving alternatives and things like that, so that's great. But I just want to say, we got the best. I mean, he's an authority on school law in the state of Nevada. He's called, he's called to for conferences. He goes to other districts and so forth. So I don't think we could find any better.
Well, and I just think at this time we have so many critical issues that are in front of us that we need to resolve more immediately. That isn't something we need to resolve immediately. It doesn't mean we don't get to it and so on. Because I remember I was the first one that said, then we'll do an RFP later. So I haven't necessarily said that's just, but I just, there are so many other big things that I'd rather, the board focus on.
It's like a 12-month period
To give us a little more of a
decide
window.
and evaluate and so forth.
Yeah.
Yes.
I would concur with what Andrea said, that a 12-month arrangement would be of best interest of both parties. So,
Alrighty.
I would echo that recommendation.
So we'll see you at a future board meeting.
All right. Thank you very
If
much.
not before. Oh, go ahead. That's all right.
I just wanted to thank you, Andrea, for this attachment A. I thought that was very
Yes.
helpful to see that.
We try to do this for most of our RFPs, is sort of
Yeah.
keep us in like what we have, what steps
Yeah.
we have to do, by when, and who's responsible. But it sort of demonstrates how long the process can take, even though it doesn't seem like it maybe should. It's a long, thorough process.
Okay.
Yeah, I had no idea it was a 3-month process.
Sometimes it's longer, depending on the
Thank you.
complexity.
Thanks.
Moving right along to 6.05, discussion preliminary approval of the proposed adoption of board policy 5305, interscholastic activities, athletics, and school-sponsored events, and the proposed deletion of board policy 5037, social well-being of students, extracurricular activities, and social events, and board policy 6145.1, interscholastic activities program. Michael Doring and crew, You're all here?
We're here. Thank you. President, Mayor, members of the board, Interim Superintendent Davis. For the record, Mike Doring, Executive Director of Options. I'm here again with Brian Roth, our Coordinator of Athletics and Activities. And we're here today just to give a brief overview of Board Policy 5305, our draft, and to answer any questions that you may have on that. And I'll turn it over to Brian.
Thank you, Mike. Brian Roth, Coordinator of Activities and Athletics. I think the board's had some opportunities to look at this, and we've discussed it in prior meetings, so if there's any recommendations for any adjustments.
Have you looked it over, anything?
This is
I
what,
looked it
like
over and I'm good
the
with it.
second time or something.
Yeah, we brought it. It's come before the policy committee on 2 occasions.
Very thorough.
No questions or discussions? I'll entertain a motion. Dr. McCleary?
This one's written down, so I won't have to make a mistake. I move that the Board of Trustees provides preliminary approval to the proposed adoption of Board Policy 5305, interscholastic activities, athletics, and school-sponsored events, and the proposed deletion of Board Policy 5037, social well-being of students, extracurricular activities and social events, and Board Policy 6415.1 Interscholastic Activities Program, and initiates the 15-day public comment period.
Is there a second to the motion?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same signal. So carried. Let the record show unanimous.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Keep those activities coming. Okay, 6.06, discussion of preliminary approval of the proposed deletion of Board Policy 4116.2, criminal defense cost of employees for possible action. Lisa Scurry.
Good afternoon. I'm Lisa Scurry, Policy Coordinator. Please excuse the voice, a little bit of a sinus infection. So really, I'm just not going to talk, just approve it all, and we'll be good to go. So real quick on this is really a piece of housekeeping. The criminal defense costs of employees is actually covered in state statute. So should that need ever arise, we do have a regulation that would outline that process. So it's really not something that needs to be covered in board policy. So, you know, we're considering it just a cleanup sort of a policy that we're asking that it be deleted.
Sounds good. Any discussion? Any questions? The chair will entertain a motion.
I move that the Board of Trustees provides preliminary approval to the proposed deletion of Board Policy 4116.2, criminal defense costs of employees, and initiates a 15-day public review process.
All those in favor, I didn't get a second. Seconded. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same signal. Passes unanimously. Let the record show. Okay, thank you very much. 6.07, discussion and preliminary approval of the proposed revision of Board Policy 9100, committees of the Board of Trustees.
Good afternoon again, Lisa Scurry.
afternoon.
So this, we've discussed committees quite a few times so far. A couple of changes that we are recommending for this policy, you know, about diversity when we're creating a committee, things like that. So those are the main changes to it. I will add that, and I think I mentioned this at the policy committee last week, I have met under Superintendent Davis's direction with our leadership team. So we're working on putting together sort of a report overarching of the committees that we have, when they were established, what their bylaws look like. So we're going to put all that information together, and then I know you've talked about having a work session, and you know, we've talked about a couple of proposals on how we're going to address that work, but I am working on it, and I've spoken to several staff members, and we'll be getting that information to you sometime. Yes, it is.
But that's outside of this, right?
It is outside of this, and the policy committee, I think it was last week, we talked about the couple of adjustments that we made about making sure that we're offering accommodations to both committee members and to the public, making sure that our composition of committees is equivalent as much as possible to the diversity of our population and our community. So those are the couple of changes, but we wanted to go ahead and get those adopted if possible, but we're still going to work on our overall governing procedure for how we're putting your committees together.
Okay. Any questions? The chair will entertain a motion.
Did you have something, Lisa?
Dr. McClure.
I move that the Board of Trustees provides preliminary approval to the proposed revision of Board Policy 9100, committees of the Board of Trustees, and initiates the 15-day public review process.
Second.
Seconded. You did? Okay. It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same signal. Carries unanimously. Let the record show. Okay, 6.08.
I'm doing so well, I just want to stay up here.
Yeah, boy. Discussion and preliminary approval of the proposed revision of Board Policy 9031, Safe and Respectful Learning Environment, and Board Policy 9201, Bullying, Harassment, and Discrimination Prohibited based on enacted legislation during the 2015 Nevada State Legislative Session.
And good afternoon again. So what we're doing here, as I explained at the last policy committee meeting last week, when the governor's bill, which was Senate Bill 504, passed, it made some significant changes both to the definition of bullying. It really brought in and finally ties our state law to federal law related to discrimination and protected classes. Greatly changes, I think greatly impacts the way our investigations will be handled, the timelines, things like that. Because that bill actually takes effect on July 1, and there's a lot of behind-the-scenes work going on through, Dr. Green's Student Services Office and counseling and diversity and all those. We thought we wanted to go ahead and, if possible, get those significant changes changed in these two policies so that we could have the new definition, so that as we get now our new complaint process, the investigation process, and all of that rolled out to principals for the start of the new school year, we would have that. And as I indicated last, I fully expect these to come back to you. I don't want to speak for, Tiffany Young, who's our diversity coordinator, or Catherine Loudon, who handles bullying complaints and things like that. But as we really put together our overall plan for the district, they may want to rework these. But for now, I just want to make sure we get the correct definitions in place, and so we can move forward.
Okay. Any questions? Comments?
Yes.
And federal.
Yeah, we're tied. They finally tied them a little more closely than we have before. So.
Okay. The chair will entertain a motion.
I guess it's my turn, Barbara.
I have bad eyes today.
Okay.
I can't read.
I move that the Board of Trustees provides preliminary approval to the proposed revision of Board Policy 9031, Safe and Respectful Learning Environment, and Board Policy 9201, Bullying, Harassment, and Discrimination Prohibited, and initiates a 15-day public review process.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same signal. So carried unanimously. Let the record show.
Thank you.
Okay, now we'll go back to the one that we put to the end of the meeting, which was 603. Discussion and possible action on the update of the district's strategic plan, Envision WCSD 2020, investing in our future, for discussion and possible action. Christine McNeil and Irene Payne.
Good afternoon, President Mayor, Interim Superintendent Davis, members of the board, Kristen McNeil, Chief of Staff of the Washoe County School District. So in order to begin...
Excuse me. Let the record show Veronica Frankel has returned.
All right. So the journey to update the strategic plan includes several key dates, including work sessions, regular board meetings, and town halls, all with the intent to gain as much public input as possible. It is worth noting that as a strategic plan is a living document, but it is a critical guidepost to which a district should regularly monitor and evaluate effectiveness. Depending upon the dynamic and changing national, state, and local landscape around educational laws, statutes, policies, a strategic plan should be reviewed on a continual basis. But nonetheless, it is a document that speaks to the priorities of a district and outlines a board's vision, mission, and core beliefs, as well as the goals of the district. We'll put the slide up that has the actual timeline of our strategic plan. So the journey to update our strategic plan began back in October of 2013, with the board conducting, through a facilitator, a SWOT analysis. The acronym stands for Strengths, Weaknesses, Opportunities, and Threats. After the SWOT analysis was completed, the board was asked to evaluate the current goals of the strategic plan, as well as the objectives, and to approve the vision, mission, and core beliefs. Through the work sessions and public input, the board addressed the need for a goal centered on safe, secure, supportive, and welcoming schools. Hence, Goal 5 was developed to make sure those areas were incorporated into the strategic plan. The work sessions and meetings included vigorous and enlightened discussions around academic achievement, metrics, transparency, community engagement, parental engagement, and social emotional learning, just to mention a few. In March of 2014, it was decided that 2 town hall meetings were to be conducted to garner public input regarding the updated plan. 2 meetings were held at Pine Middle School in Spanish and Worcester High School. In May of that same year, a survey was released to receive additional public input on the updated strategic plan. In June of 2014, at a regular board meeting, the survey results and final report were presented to the board. The 2014-2015 school year began with Envision 2015 as the adopted strategic plan, as the update was not yet approved. As the year 2015 got underway in February, it was decided to provide preliminary approval to the updated plan for the purpose of additional community outreach. During the month of March, budget and strategic town hall meetings were conducted at Pine and Worcester High School. As well, a second survey was also released. At the April 28th regular meeting, a review of those results was provided and is included in this staff report as Attachment A. At this same meeting, the board requested, as much as possible, costs associated with comments, suggestions were to be provided by the community and the public. This request has been accomplished as much as possible in Attachment C, where those costs were provided where they were feasible. As we end the 14-15 school year this week and look towards the beginning of school year 15-16 with great enthusiasm and excitement for our district, we ask for your direction in the approval of the update of the strategic plan. Thank you.
Okay. So, for the record, Irene Payne. Good afternoon, President, Mayor, Trustees, Interim Superintendent Davis. So, you also have in your packet the updated strategic plan. So, it's a revised document from Washoe, from Envision WCSD 2015. I did some minor wordsmithing upon your direction at the last meeting, so just minor wordsmithing. So this is now in front of you, awaiting your approval. And as Kristen said, it is worth just remembering that this is very much a living document, which a strategic plan has to be. It really does need to be reviewed each year and updated accordingly. So with that in mind, the board could consider approving this document today with a very clear vision around revisiting it each year, and maybe the time to do that would be around or following the data summit after you've had an update on progress of Washoe County School District, or maybe around the budget planning process, where you could actually look at each line item of the budget against each initiative in the strategic plan and then make a decision whether it needs updating or adjusting. In terms of launching the document, I believe that the most valuable time to do that would be at the start of the new school year. Probably at the A&S meeting, but obviously this is your document, this is your plan, so staff will be guided, in terms of what our plan. Yes, it is the Washoe County School District's plan, but we will be guided in terms of how we are WCSD. But we will be guided in terms of how you wish to launch that, and then we also have to consider the website. So I know, at least 12 months ago, I came in front of the board at that point talking about the draft, the revision plan, and we talked about how we would develop a website. So, this document is multi-layered in terms of you have 5 goals that direct the work that we do, but under the 5 goals then you have initiatives, and then under the initiatives you have departmental plans and action plans. So once we get your approval of this, then we have our marching orders in terms of developing what that website would look like. So the strategic plan will be on the website, but those folks who really want to drill down and see how that is being implemented could click on a goal, go to the goal, then go and see all the initiatives, go into the initiatives, see what the department who is responsible for the initiative, what that department is doing, look at their departmental plan, and maybe even look at meeting minutes and meeting agendas, so that really everything that the school district does to implement our strategic plan is accessible to our community at any point.
And I believe Irene's just talking about simple progress monitoring. How do we know we did what we said we were going to do, and what's that return on investment as we look at the work?
But so it's easily available to all our community for those that just want to see the top line and see how we're doing. But for those folks who really want to drill down and see exactly what a department is doing to implement a specific initiative.
Very good.
So we await your direction,
Okay.
and we have the plan.
Any questions or discussions? Dr. McClure.
Yes, I came here today like a house fire, and I think it must be because I'm getting so old, as my grandson constantly reminds me, I'm now turning into a curmudgeon. And so I need to allow there to be dialogue as necessary in relationship to the entire plan. I mean, I do know this pretty much backwards, forwards, and inside out. And there are people who are brand new to this board that truly don't know that, don't understand all of that. And I don't know what I was thinking. I just thought we just do this, and it's much more than just a do this. Obviously, the process up to this point has been one that has been highly effective, in my opinion. But on the other hand, with new people coming into the board who truly don't understand exactly what the processes have been and want their opportunity to give feedback, I think that's an absolutely viable option. The only thing I'm concerned about is that however this plan comes about, however it turns out, that we need to be able to have a document ready for the schools. This Washoe County School District envision 2015 is the end of this school year, and now we're moving towards 2020. And if you look at some of the captions that are within the new revised plan, and may I remind you that the past plan had 45 pages. In those 45 pages, I kept track, because I don't know what I am, but I'm too old to do this anymore. I kept track by a special code that I had in relationship to whether or not we had talked about these things at board meetings, because the other thing that would be helpful as we monitor the plan in board docs, there's a situation in board docs, you can put the whole thing in there, and every time the board discusses anything in relationship to a particular goal and or objective and or initiative, it would show up as well there. So I don't know, JJ, that's maybe needs more training, but we had talked about that a year ago. And then looking at the envisioning of it on the website, which Dr. Lamarca had originally brought to the board, I just went, oh my gosh, everybody will be able to click on, there'll be tremendous transparency in relationship to those items that we have approved. And the community has had a great stake in building this, including, I must say, Ms. Elber, who really did a nice job in looking at what she thought would be an appropriate way to move forward. I have agreement with some of that and disagreement with some of that, but I want to thank you for spending your time and doing that. I appreciate all of it. But anyway, this document has been a driver in the school district, like it or not, for the past 6 years. The superintendent's evaluation was centered around the progress in the strategic plan. So in addition to looking as to whether or not the superintendent had hair and you liked that hair, you were looking at whether he was a district leader, whether he was an instructional leader, whether he or she had the ability to do organizational management and all of the different categories that were in that evaluation. So we interwove all of the standards of the superintendency with all the goals of the strategic plan. And that was to get away from that subjective look at a superintendent, even though trying to do that, you still have feelings one way or the other. So anyway, I apologize to those who I came across real hard and fast this afternoon. I'm willing to sit back and listen and hear what you have to say.
You know, I want to say, and Lisa Ruggiero and Dave Iazzi and that those people that came on knew Howard. That was one of their main objectives, was to update and bring the strategic plan into the modern age, so to speak. And I think through their diligence, and we took 18 months to do this, but I think we got a document that will suffice and will live till 2020 and be subject to yearly reviews will be good. But I want to thank you guys that came board to look at the future, and I think that we've got basically what you guys wanted, because you guys really had great input into even syntax and sentence and structure and everything. And I think to wait any longer is a disservice to the 63,000 students that we educate in this community. And our curriculum department and everybody that had a part in the town hall meetings and the parent meetings and the public meetings, you all did a nice job, really fine job. And so that's all I got to say. Anybody else? Trustee Frankel.
Yes, as one of the people who was encouraging, and I think at the last meeting I had suggested, and it was echoed, that we would want to have ample time for there to be discussion around the plan. I just want to articulate my reasons for that have only been reiterated by the historic decisions at the state level in the last month, in the last couple of weeks with the close of the legislative session. The other thing that I want to say in terms of revisiting, or if that's the wrong word, at least considering two questions. What impact, if any, do those historic decisions and the direction that we've received from the state of Nevada have on our strategic plan? And the second question, which is one I'll ask in relation to last year's survey input, I know what we've done with this year's survey input, which hasn't been to really dialogue about the input. We've received it, it's been compiled, and I really appreciate the effort that's been put into organizing that the way it has been. And yet we haven't discussed that input. And my understanding, having done a lot of homework over the last couple days, reviewing all of the minutes from all three workshops from last year, as well as the input from the survey that was conducted last year, as well as the minutes from the June 10th meeting of last year, at which there wasn't much discussion about those survey results there either. So the reason that I have requested or had asked for time for discussion around this, it's not so much to say that everything needs to change, but we need to ask some questions about that and have ample time, not necessarily at the end of a board meeting, but ample time where we can actually talk about these suggestions. What do they tell us? Is there something that we need to emphasize differently or word differently in light of the input from the community? I recognize that many of my colleagues on the board may object to this, and I hear the reasons why, and I absolutely appreciate the timeline that we're on. And I also want to acknowledge that since this draft was written 15 months ago, there have been a lot of changes, and there has been a lot of input. And I don't think it's minimal that one of the changes is that there are 3 new members on the board. So I appreciate your comments about that, Trustee McClory. But I just wanted to say that I believe that we need to have some, at least discuss, do we think that anything that's happened or any of the input that we've received, which I've spent a lot of time with, do we need to talk about that? I mean, we each individually may have done that, but how are we using that input to frame and to inform our strategic direction? And if we ask the community for that input, we should at least discuss it. And I know and there's many things in the input that really align with what's already there, and I would agree with that. And there may be other things that we need to state differently, and perhaps some of the things I note may operate at the level of the initiatives, which I appreciate receiving that document yesterday. I had not seen it before, and I have to be honest, I haven't necessarily had ample time to really delve into it and ask all the questions I would want to ask about all of those. And yet there are some things that I think that we might look at slightly differently. And I'm just going to put out one of the themes that I heard in last year's survey results and this year's survey results have to do with an emphasis around looking at the quality of our education in addition to focusing on graduation rates. How do we emphasize that and capture that more directly in our strategic plan? Perhaps it's more directly in our initiatives. But when I look at our remediation numbers and I look at the questions that people have in our growing economy, are our students ready? As a parent of a student in the district, I'm asking myself that question. So these are the kinds of things that have led me to want to have a dialogue with my colleagues on the board, because I know many of you have had a lot of input and a lot of blood, sweat, and tears into the document that exists, and I want to respect that, as well as the timeline. And I also want to know, I want to understand that history. I mean, I've read all the documents. Like I said, I did a lot of homework on this, but it's one thing to read the discussion results. It's another thing to have the discussion with the current board that we have. So that was my reason for requesting more of a workshop setting, to have a more informal, open dialogue about this document, not to slow it down. I mean, I asked for that on April 28th, so that certainly was something we could have and still can do. But that's my perspective, and I just wanted to share that.
Any other discussion?
I just want you to know that I've heard from a couple parents that had some recommendations, and Mary's here, and I'm assuming, Mary, you'll make public comments, so I won't speak for you, but also a supporter of some of the things that Mary's working on. Mr. Johnson from Incline Village also contacted me today, and I would also share his sentiments in support of some of the information that Mary has brought forward. So I did assure him that I would bring that up today at the meeting. So I wanted to make sure to do that. So that's all I have at this moment.
Are you going to share his comments?
Well, I think Mary will talk about it at
okay.
public comment. I'm sure she can do a much better job than I can in regurgitating. Are you comfortable with that, Mary? I haven't read his input, so I don't know. It was basically in support of what you were doing. So I can certainly read it, but I think Mary will do a much better job at it in her testimony than I would regurgitating it. So.
My comment on it is I want to I appreciate the comments of all of my colleagues, the historical perspective, the 18 months that have been spent. I think that's a long period of time to do some work, and I appreciate the perspectives and the both of the willingness of both Trustee McClory and Trustee Frankel to say, you know what, I understand and I respect, here's something else to consider. I mean, that takes a lot of good work, so I'm very proud of that from my colleagues. My something that I think is really critically important for the staff is that we put them in a position that going into the new school year, that they know what the strategic plan is. I mean, you know, last year some things were derailed for some things that happened and so on. So we kind of got through it and so on, and didn't get to finalize some things. That's probably was the intention. And I want to give them more to go on than that this year. So that doesn't give a lot of time if we're going to spend some more time in looking at some things, but it does give us some time. But I do think it's important that that August 1st, you know, they go in knowing, here's our direction, here's our Envision 2020, whether it's the document we have now or whether it's one that we work on and tweak or change, or whatever the case may be. I just think it's important that we do that for our staff. No, don't let them go into another school year without having that established. I think that's unfair to them.
Any other comments? Okay, I have one public comment. Remember, 3 minutes for public comment. Mary Alber.
Mayor, Superintendent, and board members. My third time here in front of you to sort of voice encouragement to consider that the plan you're considering approving, as President said, will last through 2020. So when you approve and make a decision about what you want those goals to be and those objectives to be, they'll be locked into the website and to the board docs, and everything will trickle from those decisions that are in the strategic plan. But as Trustee Frankel said, this is a critical time. Things have changed a lot since the original base of this plan was back 5 years ago with Heath Morrison. I believe he was the one who established the main list of goals. And since then, we've had I would call it a transformation in how education is being delivered around the country and the world. We are basically at a place now where there's a choice that a school district can choose. And one path would be to do more of the same and do it harder and more rigorously. The other is to look wholesale at what does learning quality, what does quality mean in the current paradigm of 21st century learning? And I would like to suggest that I love your vision and your mission statement, which if I may read, says, courageous and innovative leader in education, one of the nation's top performing school districts, where all students achieve academic success, develop personal and civic responsibility, and achieve college and career readiness for 21st century. Having spent the last 3 years deeply looking into and going to conferences about how that is happening, how people are becoming leadership districts in the country, I can assure you that it will require doing things fundamentally differently than they're being done today. For example, breadth of learning, that's 21st century. What Robert has done a great job of describing some of the new categories of learning. I encourage you to have him present to you all the exciting things that are happening around the Nevada Ready 21 program. And we're going to have 2 to 5 schools that will be able to implement that program. But what about all the other 90 schools? How many do we have in the district? What about them that are yearning at the bit to get into the 21st century with one-to-one technology for state-of-the-art learning? We have Incline right now raising $150,000 to buy technology, but we don't actually have a way to integrate it into our vision here with the district because it's not stated anywhere in your plan. So I just beg you to take the advice of Trustee Frankel to have a session to discuss further.
Thank you for your input. We appreciate it. Okay, that's all the cards that I have. We'll bring it back to the group. Yes.
I'm going to just echo part of Trustee Frankel's comments and Dr. Taylor's comments as well. I think that, and Dr. McClary's really, a lot of work has been done in the past 18 months. Less work has been done in the past 6 months on this document, and in the past 6 months you acquired a couple new trustees. So in the interest of that, I think that we maybe should have a workshop so we can just discuss it. Maybe we don't change anything. Maybe it's just about us being able to learn more about the document and ask questions. But at the same time, we need to be able to give a guiding document to this staff at the beginning of the next school year. So I think that we should do something in the way of a workshop, but with the commitment that when we start the next school year, we're going to have a document to give to all of our staff so that they have something to work off of.
Did you have another?
It's Ryan 702.
Pardon me?
702.
702. Okay. Any other comments? Dr. McClary?
I think that may be the direction that we need to go. Not prolonging the inevitable, but taking in all of the new ideas and having everyone understand how they all link together. When I went through all of these comments, I generally flag everything, and then I got to the point where I needed to write. What I did was synthesize what I thought I was hearing from the comments, this last batch of comments, and where some of the proposals would fit within the strategic plan. And then I know that there's going to be a meeting set with Ms. Elber on Monday, I believe, to go over her discussion materials and to look at where we are, because one of the things that only showed up here the other day had to do with the technology piece and the 21st century learning strategies. And I don't know whether she's seen that, but it covers almost everything that I would be interested in relationship to how you work with technology as a learner and how you work with technology as a teacher, and the options that are available for all of the students. I am not unfamiliar with computer-based learning and instructional programs utilized at the computer for all of the children throughout an entire elementary school. And that is to say, what it does bring you, it brings you that close-up look at what may be out there on the internet that will refresh, inform, make it highly visible so that all children will fully understand through the visuals, and then all of the accompanying materials that occur to make them understand a particular concept. Instructionally, at Bernice Matthews, and I think it was probably 1999, I had 150 computers with 4 computers in every single classroom, plus all the teachers had a computer and we had a lab. And so I had the Breakthrough to Literacy program, the Sword of Success, we had the Read 180 program, all of which were based with literacy, and then a whole lot of other basic things. Moving it to the next level, when you begin to look at high school, that's where you can see where you have children all across the spectrum, and you've got some children that have all the language, all the experiences, all of the identity to move along with a particular subject, and you have another group of children across a school who have a little bit, and then some have nothing at all. And what this does, it begins to enhance the flexibility that you have to be able to meet the needs of all children, not only in the basic subjects, but in the history, in social studies, in geography, whatever the subject may be. So I'm a very strong believer in all of that, as I am in the one-to-one. The reality of all of this is, however, that funding-wise, we have to make choices and priorities. Now, I understand the governor is going to be giving us some, and how that's going to be utilized, that's something that we're going to need to determine how that fits into the entire strategic plan, because there'll never be enough funding to be able to move forward with what I would hope would be that yes, there's going to be a computer, yes, there's going to be an iPhone, yes, there's going to be an Android, yes, there's going to be something for every single child. But my experience also tells me that in putting together all of these computer-based programs, that I also had a section of children that didn't communicate and didn't do well with a computer-based instruction. They needed that one-on-one teacher. So when you begin to look at all the finite gradations that there are, when you're talking about instruction, in my mind, this is one level that we would benefit greatly from. Does that mean we change everything else? No. If you're looking at whether children are auditory, kinesthetic, visual learners, you look at all of the different styles. If you look at the multiple intelligences, there are no silver bullets. And that's why, in my opinion, the quality of the education has to do with whether or not you can tell me that every child in this classroom is moving forward. The quality be depending upon the high student, what is he or she doing to keep them actually engaged, moving more independently, versus the child on the other end of the spectrum who may or may not need to have the word dog presented to him in 100 different ways. That's the quality of the instruction that I look for. Are we meeting the needs of children? So that's my piece on all of this.
Okay, late public wants to speak. John Eppolito.
Guess I did make a habit of it. Sorry, I couldn't resist. On the technology, I wanted to make a comment on what's happening in other countries. Estonia, they start coding, computer programming with every kid in first or second grade and continue that through high school. They're teaching the kids how to develop software. China, every kid does software programming. What we want to do is hand a middle school kid an iPad, which they already know how to use anyway. To me, if you want a kid to be ready for the 21st century, teach them how to be the producers, not the consumers of the technology. Personally, the other problem with the one-to-one devices is it makes it a lot easier to track the children, because that happened in Los Angeles. When you give a kid a one-to-one device, you know every single place that kid has gone. That is not acceptable. None of my kids will be on a one-to-one device. I don't care if it's Clark County or wherever it is, or Washoe County, I mean. I think we're getting it backwards. If you want to get the kids ready for the 21st century, teach them how to work behind the computer. Don't teach them how to use an iPad. They know how to use an iPad. Thank you.
I could get into an argument with you, but I will not.
Thank you for your comments. Any other? I'd just like to say, usually all these people take vacations during July, so that's really a dead month. So if you want to have a workshop, figure out a date and want to have it in the beginning of school, which is in August, so we're up against a pretty big timeline. Is there a motion?
I'd like to hear from our superintendent and also chief of staff. What is the logistics?
The logistics of doing a workshop? Well, I know that there's trustees out in July already for some dates, and so we'd have to look at everybody's calendars and cross-reference who can be here and who actually needs to be here. First, I want to thank Irene and Kristen for their work on the strategic plan for like the last 3 years from when I got here. Like, this is like a culmination activity of the work, so thank you. It's a working document, and so at the end of the day, what we decide in July, we might change in February too. I mean, they're like school improvement plans. You write them, and based on need, you change them. There's a lot of work that go into them. I think this is really about exposure to what we have been doing and making sure all of the trustees understand that piece. And then what additions do you bring to it? I know, Trustee Taylor, you talked about a deliberate effort to acquire a variety, a diverse population of teachers and staff. So what are we talking about, and when can we get that done? And does that mean that we cannot adopt a plan now, or does that mean we have to wait until we have a work session? And that truly is your purview. Our job is to execute it and make sure the work happens and get it done with some recommendations about what we believe. Did I help you out?
And who else did you want to hear from? Chief of Staff.
I think you all know where I stand. But that being said, and I do understand, there's game-changing legislation that has just happened, and that should not be underestimated as far as some of those changes within our state. However, we would encourage the board to have as much direction as possible for staff. If there is to be a work session, what exactly that work session is going to look like, so we get the most effective use of all these wonderful people's time, and what that looks like. Is it one goal area that you want to review? Is it certain initiatives that you want to take a look at, or certain objectives? And if we could have that direction, I think we could, with the superintendent's direction, we can have a very productive work session that would, on the outside, at the end of the day, we would come away with a document that you all feel good at.
And do we provide them with the district technology plan? I mean, I know the pieces are embedded, but they see the actual technology plan for the district?
Yes, they have the technology plan that was approved back in May, so they actually do have that as well, and that's on board docs. We can send it to them as well in a separate attachment, but the technology plan was adopted by the board.
I just feel it's incumbent on me just to mention that if there's substantial changes to this document, then having it ready to launch at the beginning of the school year is nearly an impossible challenge. But we could look at having a something maybe with just the 5 goals without, it depends what you decide to do in your work session, but just know that it depending on the breadth of the changes, it could be very challenging to have this ready to launch to staff, because we're talking the August the 3rd. Would be the A&S meeting, and that would be the perfect time, because then you could talk about the goals to the principals and the assistant principals.
I think that's fair. I mean, I appreciate you saying that. I think it's very fair. And I'll go back to what Trustee Smith said earlier. If we decide, you know what, we want some more time to get it going to this, because some things have changed in Carson City, as you said, Chief of Staff McNeil. Having a little bit more information will be good for those of us who are new, and maybe revisiting will be good for those that have been here. But at the end of the day, I go back to what Trustee Smith said. We need to make a commitment that we're going to have a working document ready for staff. And if that let me just make this up, because actually I love the recent documentation that we've gotten, the work that you did to line up all of the comments with all of the initiatives. I mean, I was like, man, this is a great document. I love that. So and for us to be prepared when we show up, and have some targets in terms of some things that we like to do, with gives you great direction. And if that means, okay, hey, if there's 50 things somebody wants to revisit, I'm totally making this up, I hope not, but let's just say then we may have to decide, you know what, we can deal with 5 right now and continue, because it's a living, working document that we may get back to in the spring, we may get back to, but we commit going in that there will be a working document finalized so that our staff can have something to work on by August 1st, and that may mean we take steps.
Anything? Yes.
I just want to say that if I was actually prepared to have some of that dialogue here today, because I realized this might be the only chance to have that, but I'm hearing also kind of growing sense that we all need to come to a discussion with a lot of clear direction for staff on what it is we want to talk about. I mean, I can answer some of that today. I know for me, Goal 1 is particularly important in light of some of the changes and in light of some of the comments that we received both last year and this year. So I know that there are some areas there that I would want to focus on. But again, I think if we're not going to have that discussion here today, then we need to have that discussion somewhere so that we can all kind of get to a sense that this is our plan. And at this point, it doesn't feel like my plan. I mean, because I haven't had a part of the conversation with my fellow trustees. So I'd like to think that because today is June 9th, there is a way for us to have at least a half-day workshop that is dedicated solely to conversing about this. It's not at the end of a board meeting that's packed with other items, that it is a much more fluid conversation, similar to what Trustee McClory started in terms of her perspective, and I appreciated hearing that. That's the kind of discussion I want to have, so I can learn from all of you who have done this. And I mean, I come with my perspective, but it is just one, and I'm eager to learn from others. So I'd like to think, and I'm happy to work on that, working within that timeline. I think we do need to have direction for staff. I'm not saying we don't, and we should try to have something finalized. And maybe it doesn't significantly change, but it's the dialogue that I want to have. And I think if we can have a half-day workshop, maybe even before the month of July, if I'm hearing that it's a question of staff's vacations and during July, which I know is a difficult month for many people, including one of our trustees will be traveling. So I think if we can figure that out, I mean, I don't know if we can all work together on coming up with a time where we can find a 4-hour block. I looked at when some of the workshops were held last year, and I know it's a lot of work for staff, and I want to minimize that, and I appreciate that. But there was one that was held on a Saturday. I know everybody groans when I say that, but you know, that might be an option, a half day on a Saturday or a half day during the week, where we can all just have an open dialogue about what do you think about this objective? How does it need to change in light of the circumstances? Does it need to change at all? Does it capture what we've heard from Carson City and we'll continue to hear? And I do believe that strategic planning documents are living documents. I think we're going to need to have that kind of conversation almost every year, even though we have a plan that's a 5-year document. I think it's just something we have to do in light of changing circumstances. So I'm comfortable within the timeline. I'm not going too many places except visiting colleges for short periods of time with my daughter this summer, so I will be around. I'm willing to work with staff to make it happen.
I would just say that we all make a commitment to whatever the date is, that we all show up.
Yeah,
I'm just gonna be honest.
Well, yeah, let's do the work to pick the date that people say, yeah, I'll be in town, I can make that, and then absolutely. I think we have to commit to that.
We're working on dates right now.
I don't think we need to work on dates. I think Kristen or staff can send out a doodle. But we all know that this has to be given to Irene and enough time to have it.
So is the direction to find a date to do a work session? Let's get clarification so we can decide what we're doing here.
I think that's what I'm hearing.
Within the next 2 weeks?
And we have to.
By the end of June?
No,
Is that better for staff? The earlier the better? Is that what I'm hearing? Seeing with some nods? And
Oh, we
some
work
nods
late
behind you?
nights. We can find time.
Well, they're not happy. I can tell you right now.
They'll be more than happy if we don't get this
because
thing done.
they put so much work into this, and I get it. So I'm okay with that.
And I don't think the work is lost, quite honestly. I mean, it's I don't think the work is lost at all.
So I guess maybe what I'd like to hear a little bit from Veronica, Nick, and Angie right now is what you would really like to see happen on that day. What would how do you see this dialogue happening?
Well, I think some of the questions I raised before that I think we need to dialogue directly about and maybe focus that question in on each of the areas in the goals. Now, again, my lens right now is around goal 1, and I think that that's one that's been particularly impacted by both the changes, the legislative, historical legislative changes, as well as some of the majority of the comments, I think, came in related to goal 1. So I would like to focus on that goal particularly, personally. And I would like to ask the question, what from the feedback we've received from the public, 2 questions. I mean, from a facilitator standpoint, these are the 2 questions I would ask. How has the input that we've received from the community, how does it, if at all, impact our perspective about the objectives under goal 1 and the initiatives under goal 1, now that I'm clear on those? And 2, what, if any, impact do the changes and the upcoming direction and the impact financially on our budget and of the programmatic direction that the state has brought through its legislation, what impact does that have on our objectives and our initiatives? So those are the questions I would want to discuss as an open discussion. That's off the top of my head. That's what I'm thinking.
A lot about goal 1 and a little bit about goal 3. Just to see how it aligns with some of the stuff that the state is going to be asking us to do in the future with engagement.
Current engagement.
So is the intent for every board member to be here?
Yes.
Absolutely.
Okay, well, we know that somebody's out from June the 18th to July 2nd right off the rip, right? Someone's going to be in Wimbledon. We just got to be up front here.
Right.
So those Saturdays are gone. So
let's
can't
do it
be
right.
here.
Let's do it right after she gets back then.
So we're going to go to July.
Yeah. Well.
Okay. So we know what dates to look at. We have to.
Yeah. I think we start. We know Barbara's out of the country, so.
Let's do it while she's gone.
Yeah. I'll give you my written doc. I've just scribbled all the stuff in here.
We will look at dates and provide you opportunities to weigh in.
So early July.
July 3rd is
July
probably
4th
not
would
the
be a
best.
perfect day.
Yeah, it's a Saturday. No, he said July 4th would be a perfect day.
We can have a barbecue.
I'm afraid we'd be the ones barbecued.
I think that's a legal holiday. Nobody be working on the 3rd.
And we're all committed, and we'll look for something as early as possible in July to give staff as much time as we can, and work between now and then to help give some direction to keep things narrow and focused, and maybe even just to be on the real safe side. Just let's plan on if we need a day. I don't think we'll need a day, but if we want to really be safe, I want to give staff as much of an opportunity. I don't want to get to where now we're at the end and man, we just need another hour, and now we're trying to find another day. Somewhere.
And just so we're transparent, I know many of us are in different places. I'll be in D.C. meeting with the senators in the first 2 weeks off and on, so it's going to be a juggling match here.
Okay. And let's all be as flexible as we can. I will.
So the big thing that we're hearing is for goal 1. Goal 1, focusing questions.
Go ahead.
And goal 3.
Goal 2.
Parent engagement.
Goal 2.
Under goal 3.
There's a certain amount of question on each of them.
Right.
if you're going to do it, you got to do it all at the same time. you know, if you're going to have a rewrite, and you better.
Don't say rewrite.
No, not a
John.
rewrite.
Well,
not a
My
rewrite.
heart just stopped.
That's what they're talking about.
I didn't say.
No, I don't.
Yes, they are.
I hope not.
John, I don't think it's going to come to that. I think it's a
Okay.
question of reordering some
You,
things.
you're not
And
going
if
to
it's
be
a
able to
rewrite,
do
we just
this.
have to agree we're not going to have a plan. I mean, we have to be honest. If the time doesn't work out, we might not have a plan in order for the kickoff, and we'll have to go back. I mean, we just have to be honest about what we're looking at. If it doesn't work out, then we don't have a plan August the 3rd, and we move forward to when it's ready.
Yes. And we
we're committing that we're going to have a plan.
we probably won't have the website portion of it ready because we have to build that from scratch. But that, I feel like that's okay at this point if we have a document that we can go to our principals in our school with.
We can get a document in PowerPoint by August 3rd.
In PowerPoint. Write that down, JJ. In PowerPoint.
All right.
Do we need to vote on that, or?
Do we need a?
Yeah. I don't.
No. And have it on the 3rd.
Okay. Direction to staff.
Shop.
I'll tell you, it's going to be hard for me in July.
So we'll have a workshop as early as we can make it happen in July, and we'll go through each of the 5 goals. We know there's going to be an emphasis on goal 1 and possibly goal 3, but we'll go through each of the goals.
And some will be shorter than others.
Absolutely.
And I just want to state this for the public that we've all been working on this plan. I mean, we've already, completed many of the objectives and the strategies in this plan. It's an ongoing work in progress, but the work staff is already doing the work and has been doing the work from the get-go. So,
Okay.
Thank you to you two. I know that's a lot.
So, 7:01, any request for future board meetings? Okay, none. Pardon me? Yeah. Thanks all you guys that are getting up and leaving for coming. We appreciate it.
Oh, you almost made it, Ben.
We're going to have comfortable chairs like these Raiders throughout this place. We're getting them 2 at a time from each of the high schools. So at this time, public comment, and I do have a card from Mr. Eppolito.
The long drive from Incline. I wanted to let you guys know 2 things that happened yesterday. Arkansas dropped the Common Core test, the PARCC test, and Oregon legislation passed 50-10. It's still a bill, it's not a law, that requires schools to notify parents twice per year of the right to opt out of standardized tests. And in that same article from Oregon Live, they did state that Oregon had 5% opt out of SBAC this year. To back up, February 15th, Wisconsin dropped the SBAC test. Last week, a week ago today, Missouri dropped the SBAC test. I believe that leaves about 16 states left in SBAC testing. So after all this money, time, and stress on children and teachers, it looks like we're going to be able to compare Nevada students to about 15 other states, students in 15 other states. This is probably one of the biggest things of all. I think I might have emailed you guys, but I can't remember. 3 states, there's only 3 states in the country using Common Core aligned tests as high school exit exams. Florida, Ohio, and Nevada. In Nevada, it's the end of course exams. Again, I don't know if this was more about what's best for children or what's best for the political future of one man. The states are Florida, Ohio, and Nevada. The U.S. Department of Education, on February 2013, they wrote a document titled Promoting Grit, Tenacity, and Perseverance. One of the things that they say in that document, they talk about the growing movement to explore the potential of non-cognitive factors, attributes, dispositions, social skills, and interpersonal resources independent of intellectual ability. Now, I'm still researching this. I've been spent 3 years so far, but the deeper I get into this SBAC, remember, you're putting a 4th grader in front of a computer for 10 hours. It's a lot of stress. The deeper I get into this, the more I think part of this is to develop a psychological profile on the kids. And where I'm getting that is from Dr. Gary Thompson. He's a clinical psychologist, an African American. I don't know where he's from, but I watched him testify in front of one of the Middle Eastern or Midwest states. And what he says is this test is especially problematic for special ed children, for gifted children, for ELL children, and for minority children. And we're talking about the SBAC. The NSEA came out with a directive that supports all Nevada school districts to develop and publicize a standardized opt-out policy. So my question to Washoe County is, what are you guys doing to let people know that they can opt out of this inappropriate, ridiculous test? I haven't seen anything yet. I know Washoe County will have over 5% opt-out next year, mark my words. You guys can either help me or fight against me, it's up to you. Parents do have the right to know what this test is about. My wife has a statement that would take me probably 2 minutes to read. Can I read it or not? No?
You have 17.
Send it to us.
Oh, it's going
It's from my wife.
No, send
You're in trouble with my wife, sir.
That's all right. That's all right.
I always am.
That's all right. I've been in trouble with lots of women.
I don't want to hear it.
Yeah, there is.
Okay, the next meetings will be the June 23rd at 2 p.m. here in the boardroom. Okay, meeting adjourned.